Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. It was sent here by YouTube. Well, thank you, Gamer Breach, for coming from YouTube. We appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Salutations. And yes, Blueberry Muffin, you are on the screen. Welcome, welcome. As always, we're going to give everybody a little bit of time to get in the door before we get things started and going. Yeah, JD, I'm having a good day. I spent most of the morning hanging out with some friends, and we were playing 7 Days to Die, just chilling, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So enjoyed the day a lot, and then I got some sleep, and now I'm hanging out with you guys. So yeah, good day so far. So this stream, I'm going to be chatting with y'all, and I'm going to be talking about what it's like to have chronic illness and whatever else happens to come up while we're talking. Well, welcome there, Brechtel. This is your first time chatting. Hello, croissant. I see you bring snacks. And hello, Dark Glows. Where did my name come from? Well, the first half, the zebra, comes from the medical phrase to look for horses rather than zebras, which is a reference to not look for rare medical diseases. And the Ehlers-Danlos Society now uses the zebra for their mascot. So that's where the zebra comes from. And the second half, the pig, is my totem animal. So I just squished them together. And that's where zebra pig came from. Nothing super exciting. So I hope that everyone is doing well today. The snack croissants. Oh, we're watering the face hole. Thank you, Gamer Breach. Yes, water is good for us. Oh, and I still have an itchy nose. what it looks like. No, I found my croissants! Well, they have been bouncing around, so, maybe we should just, like, grab one and be like, nom, 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 nom. Almost becoming as prevalent as the nachos. I remember seeing a story about your stream sometime earlier, and I was like, why don't I help and support? So that's how I found you. Well, thank you, Dark Glows, for coming and checking us out after you saw the, you know, video kicking around about me. And it has definitely made its rounds, which is kind of wild and crazy. I mean, croissants are pretty tasty. And the Waffle House has found its new host, the croissant. Yes, indeed, it is the croissant. Right? Just make it the croissant house, right? We don't need it to be the Waffle House. We can make it the croissant house. A waffle croissant. Do I like a Monte Cristo? I'm assuming that this is some type of food or beverage that you're asking about. I am not sure what it is, so I'm gonna say I don't know. Brice de Copper Coyote. Alright, so it seems like peeps have pretty well settled in, so we'll get diving into the topic, and feel free to ask questions or add commentary. So the first thing that I want to talk about, get into talking about this, is that right now the research suggests that between 60 and 65% of Americans have some form of chronic illness. And that means that the majority of Americans, adults, have a chronic illness. And when we talk about a chronic illness, that means that someone who has an illness that has been persistent, that the symptoms have been present for 6 months or more, and that it is anticipated that those symptoms are going to continue, that the prognosis is that there is no cure. So that they're going to have that illness for the rest of their life. So most Americans have some kind of disease or illness that they're going to have for the remainder of their life. And these kinds of diseases vary a lot. They can be mental illnesses like depression and anxiety, or they can be physical illnesses like diabetes and asthma. Myself, the major medical illness that I have a physical illness, and it's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it is a type of connective tissue disorder. And because it's a connective tissue disorder, it causes problems throughout my whole body and comes with a whole bunch of other, comorbidities. So it's kind of a package plan. I also have a mental illness diagnosis. I have OCD, I have ADHD, and I have autism. So, Copper Coyote, you are also in the chronic illness club. One of the clubs that you just never really want to sign up for, but you just kind of find yourself in, right? Gamer breach, you have sleep paralysis. Ugh. That can be very uncomfortable. Yeah, I bet you hate it. I wouldn't want to experience that on any kind of regularity. So I think that one thing that many people misunderstand about chronic illness is that it affects everything. Like, you can't go about your life without your chronic illness having some kind of impact on your life. And I think that this is especially true for individuals who have chronic illnesses that are in the mental health department. But even those that are physical illnesses, you don't just conveniently leave your your illness at home. So even something like insomnia, that can be a chronic illness, people who don't sleep every day end up feeling tired and have chronic fatigue and are more prone to illnesses, more prone to stress. And that impacts how well they can process new information. It impacts just everything. Even though it's just at night that their illness is a problem. I mean, it really still affects everything. So I think that's something that is misunderstood a lot about it. So insomnia is the difficulty falling or staying asleep. Most of the time, it's some combination of the two. You know, most people, it's not just one or the other. Most people usually have a combination of a difficulty falling asleep and then staying asleep. So if you see things that are not there, those are called hallucinations, and that falls underneath the umbrella of psychosis. So yeah, Copper Coyote, I think that when it comes to any kind of chronic illness, I mean, you're saying that sometimes a hug will assist with mental illness. I think that what people don't realize is that social support and feeling like that you belong to the community and that you're wanted is the single most important factor in having a good and positive outcome in any illness. So even if it's a physical illness, feeling like the people in your life care about you, want you there, and are supporting you through the difficulties that you're having are more important than anything else going on in your life in order for you to have a good outcome in your healthcare. So yeah, hugs matter. And I don't think that we in America give the power of social support enough credit for how absolutely fundamentally important it is for it to be there. Every night I have this one nightmare of me being chased down a hallway by my sleep paralysis demon, and I always get caught. Ugh. Game of Breach, that sounds pretty awful. And nightmares are terrible. I used to have really, really bad nightmares. I used to struggle with night terrors. Now I very rarely have nightmares, maybe once a month now. But yeah, nightmares are pretty awful. If you didn't see it before, a Monte Cristo is basically ham and cheese with French toast as the bread. Oh, well, Copper Coyote, I have never had that, but it sounds like it would be pretty tasty. I think that I would definitely be willing to try that because I really like French toast. So when people are being evaluated for their chronic illness, one of the things that frequently comes up is how does their chronic illness impact their daily life? And I think that it's usually quite difficult for people with chronic illness to talk about this because it just becomes so much part of your life that how do you separate like where your illness ends and your life begins? It's just super part of everything that you do. So when you try to explain the impact that it has on your life, you want to just say everything. But of course, healthcare providers are looking for something a little bit more than that. You know, they want something specific. And yeah, I have ADHD and I think autism. Yeah, Gamer Breach, those two frequently do come together. Tortai, my dad has diabetes. Diabetes is very common, especially type 2 in the United States. I'm taking 3 different medications as well as seeing a therapist, psychiatrist, and psychologist. Yeah, Copper Kyle. I think that's something that people really don't think about when they don't have chronic illness is the amount of stuff that becomes involved. So when you talk about how does it impact your life? Well, you have to see a therapist, you have to see a psychiatrist, you have to see a psychologist. So usually you're seeing therapists fairly regularly, you know, once a week, sometimes a couple times a week. You know, psychiatrists and psychologists, you know, they can also be a couple times a year, sometimes 2 or 3, you know, every 2 or 3 months. So you have to make time in your life for all these appointments. And you have to take medications, oftentimes multiple times a day. So it just becomes this part of your life and this part of your routine on top of whatever symptoms you're trying to manage. And not to mention the stress that comes with figuring out, you know, what things are covered by your insurance and the costs that's associated with them is all part of this whole, like, how does this impact your life? Well, if you're trying to make sure you can afford these things, then sometimes it means working more or, you know, getting a different insurance or whatever. So the impact can be pretty far reaching. My grandmother has diabetes. Because of croissants, I try to keep her from more diabetes. All right. Hestia has type 2. He had it when he lived in Mexico. Yeah. Yeah, Chortain, the type 2 is pretty common. I don't know about in other countries, but it is the type that is most prevalent or most common in America. I see and feel a person in my head like he could hurt me. I'm sorry, Gamer Breach. That would be a very difficult thing to deal with, and that is definitely good that you're getting the support for that. And water the face hole. Thank you, Nana La Vibes. Do I have Pokemon Go? No, I do not. I haven't even played it, and I don't tend to play the Pokemon games myself. Um, I watched this show, and it was never really that appealing to me, so I didn't really get into a lot of the games, or I didn't get into any of the games. And we're doing a posture check. Thank you, Copper Kyle, because I'm definitely being slouchy. And yes, in the background, that is the llamacorn May. She is a squishmallow, the like most amazingest ever type of stuffed animal. They're super soft and squishy and fluff clouds. Hello, ads. How you doing? I'm here, just a bit tired. Can you talk about EDS? How does one get a diagnosis, or how does it start? Or yeah, I can talk about EDS. So EDS is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It is a genetic disorder, so it is something that you are born with. There are 13 types, and the type that you the type that you have is determined by your symptom set and the genes that you're born with. So right now, 12 of the types, they have identified the genes that are associated with the disorder. The hypermobile type, which is the type that I have, doesn't currently have the gene identified. So that is diagnosed by the symptom set alone. So you have to go through an evaluation process. So how does one get the diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos? So the answer is that usually with a lot of long, convoluted hoopla. The majority of individuals who get the diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos have gone 12 years from the time they first sought medical care to the time that they get a diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos. So it's usually a very prolonged period of time to get a diagnosis. And that's largely because it is not the first thing that people look at. It is considered a rare disease, so people are going to rule out all of the common things before they start looking at the rare stuff. And when you finally get to somebody who is going to do the diagnosis, they will give you an exam, they'll do a genetic panel, and if you have the right genes, you'll get one of those types. If you don't have the genes and you fall underneath the right spectrum of symptoms, you will get the hypermobile type diagnosis. So yeah, it's kind of a convoluted, complicated process. And good morning, Boop Snooter. How are you? So are you starting to feel better there, ads, now that you've been resting? I hope that you are on the mend and recovering well. So how do you get rid of sleep paralysis? Well, Gamer Breach, unfortunately, the answer is that you don't. The reason that it falls underneath the category of a chronic illness is because there is no cure for the illness of sleep paralysis syndrome. There are medications and treatment options which would require you to see a sleep specialist. They usually start by having you go through a sleep study. And then they can look at what kinds of treatment options are available to you based on what they see in the sleep study, based on your history, and based on a lot of other medical factors going specifically, what's going on specifically with you. But it's more about medical management than it is a cure, unfortunately. And that's really the nature of chronic illness, is that we don't get rid of these. These are things that we have to live with, and we have to manage the symptoms. Yeah, and it's pretty common with chronic illness that you're going to have some days that the symptoms are better than others. And it doesn't matter what the illness is. You're going to have days that the symptoms are really, really present and really difficult. And then you're going to have times that they're not as bad. And there's a lot of factors that can play into that. And that depends on the person, and that depends on the illness. And if you're finding that you're having times that are better than others, it can be helpful to try to figure out what those differences are, so that maybe you can find out what some of the triggers are that make your symptoms worse. So, what are other diseases that are considered before getting to the EDS diagnosis? Well, ads, the answer is everything. Because the challenge with Ehlers-Danlos is that it is a connective tissue disorder. And by nature of being a connective tissue disorder, it means that your entire body is affected. And all of your symptoms present over your entire body. So the challenge with disorders that affect the entire body is the way that our system is set up, is that we have people who are super specialized in focusing in just one area. So let's say you're having trouble with your stomach, you're getting a lot of nausea, a lot of vomiting, a lot of stomach pain. You're going to go see someone who specializes in the stomach, the gastroenterologist. And they're not going to be, focusing on anything other than what could be going on with your stomach. And they're going to be working up problems for the stomach. But at the same time, you're having these problems, a lot of joint pain and hip pain. And, your hip is always bothering you and it feels like it doesn't move well. So you're going to see a bone joint specialist for that, an orthopedist, for that. So the problem with the systemic or all over your body disorders is that they end up focusing in on just the one problem, rather than asking the question of what could all of these symptoms together mean, and as a unifying presentation, it could be this thing. And that is a large part of why it can take so long for someone with any type of connective tissue disorder to get a diagnosis. And Ehlers-Danlos is only one type of connective tissue disorder. There are like 200 something types of connective tissue disorder, and not all of them are genetic disorders. So there's a lot of them. My sister is going to Comic-Con in the summer, and I can't make it, but the voice actor for Uncle Ira is going to be there, and I'm going to see if my sister can get something of mine signed. Oh, Zim, that sounds really super exciting. That would be really neat. This just in, Zebra Pig is a wonderful person. Well, thank you, Copper Coyote. I appreciate that. I don't know what it's called, but it's hard to talk to people. I don't know. Well, Gamer Breach, there's a lot of things that can cause difficulties in connecting and talking to people. It can be social anxiety disorder. It can be just lack of practice and lack of social integration. It can be issues like autism, where you have a hard time reading the paralanguage. It can be a whole bunch of stuff. So if you feel like that's really getting in the way and affecting and impacting your life, then the best option would to go and see a psychiatrist and get that evaluated. So, I mean, there are many people who have challenges when they're getting diagnosed with chronic illnesses. And it depends a lot on like which chronic illnesses it is, but the more uncommon the chronic illness and the disorder, the longer it takes to get the diagnosis. And that's largely because it's not as well known, it's not as well researched, the providers don't know as much about it in general. Um, and it's not going to be the first thing that people are looking for. And you're welcome, ads. This whole conversation is to help answer questions, and I love getting them. Zim, you haven't gotten your French lessons done yet? Always the pressure to do the homeworks. It never ends, does it? Always feels like there's something else that we're supposed to be doing. And it's always whatever we're not doing. I got diagnosed with CRPS 13 years ago. The lack of information at the time was crazy. It took 2 years for someone to tell me what was going on. Yeah, and that is really frequently the experience of people who are having chronic illnesses. So you'll go in with specific you know symptoms that you're having a challenge with, and people will be like not sure what's going on, and it can take a really long time, and it usually means seeing multiple specialists. And for those who don't know, CRPS is complex regional pain syndrome, and yeah, it's a form of chronic pain, and it's usually in the leg or the arm, but it can be in another part of the body, and it's pretty freaking miserable. So I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. And the challenge with something like that is that when they think about pain, they are looking for what was the injury, what was the what's the infection, what's the cause, that they're looking for that acute thing, when this isn't an acute thing. So there isn't a infection that is still kicking around. And don't worry about not being able to subscribe there, Copper Coyote. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate the viewership and the support through that. And remember that there are many different ways that people can support us, and viewing and being present during the live streams is one way to do that. I've had a seizure before, and that's not a good experience. Yeah, Gamma Breach, seizures suck. I have had 2 seizures. They suck a lot, and don't really want to have them ever again. The seizures are not fun. Ugh. Hey, Slap, how you doing tonight? Do I make YouTube videos? Yes, I have 2 YouTube channels. I have Zebra Pig Gaming and I have Zebra Pig Thoughts. My Zebra Pig Gaming is just that, all the videos that are around us, like playing video games and talking about gaming, and the Zebra Pig Thoughts are the videos that are surrounding the chats and any of the content that is around our medical conversations. So yeah, we're over on YouTube. The Zebra Pig Thoughts is just getting started, so but hey, we're getting there. It's a little baby channel, so. But we're hoping that we can get it to grow and be as big as the Zebra Pig Gaming. So I think that there's a lot of hurdles when it comes to chronic illness in our current healthcare climate. And one of the biggest challenges is that our medical system is set up for acute care and not chronic illness. So acute care is short-term illnesses that we expect you to have a full and complete recovery from. And these tend to be things like infections, you broke a leg, even cancer is considered an acute illness. And these are things that have a very finite term, and they're acute because one of two things happens. Either you recover and you get better, or you don't and you die. We're hoping for the first. But these are things like heart attacks, or getting in a car accident, having an infection, any of these like short term. And I say short term because in the medical world, they can be shorter term, and they aren't viewed as being things that will be forever. However, some of these acute illnesses can lead to chronic illness problems. Having a injury can lead to chronic pain syndromes. Having an infection can lead to things like chronic fatigue syndrome. Having COVID can lead to long COVID. So you can have, and often that is the start of many chronic illnesses, is an acute illness that changes our bodies and leads into this chronic problem. So we're not really definitively sure like where that line is of like why some people have that chronic problem after an acute illness and why some people don't. Like we don't understand the science of that. We don't understand what makes that difference. But yeah, there's this portion of people that but the challenge that we're seeing in healthcare right now is that 60 to 65% of the population, which is the majority of the population, have chronic illness and are the majority of the consumers of healthcare to manage that chronic illness. But the focus of our healthcare is still in acute medicine. So providers are being taught to diagnose, assess, evaluate, and treat medicine as though you had an acute illness. So they often approach medicine as if you had an acute illness, when the reality is that the majority of the patients that they're going to experience in their practice are people who have chronic illness that needs management rather than those who have an acute illness like a urinary infection. So I think that that's one of the hurdles. So when people are going in to get a diagnosis, there's this huge focus looking at what is the acute illness rather than could this be a chronic illness. And providers aren't really evaluating things in that context and in that view. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons that it takes so long. And I think the other big reason is because of the fragmented way that we have our healthcare system. That we have so many super specialties that we look at just one body part at a time. Well, you have a good night, Copper Coyote. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. Hope you can come again. And the challenge with that is that our medicine has gotten complicated enough that it's super hard to know all the things if you don't have a specialty or even a subspecialty. But in doing that, it makes it really hard for there to be this person keeping track of the big picture. So Yeah. Oftentimes it takes a long time in figuring out what's going on and getting that answer and getting that sorted. What is my favorite game? 7 Days to Die. Tortine, there's always a like huge peak at the beginning and then like a trickle down in our numbers, and that's because we had a viral event. Unfortunately, when you have a viral event, you end up with a strange mix of people and you end up with a lot of followers and not always a lot of viewers. And yeah, it ends up with you end up with a lot of strange dynamics. Um, and one of those strange dynamics is that you end up with high follow rates that don't necessarily convert to viewer rates. And that's okay. You have a good night. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. Well, there's Sparrow. I think that it is a great game, and if you're looking to try a new one, I think 7 Days to Die is a great one to try. I also think that it is a better game to play with a group of friends than alone. You can totally play it by yourself, but I think that it is way better with a group of friends. But I, in general, enjoy playing games more with other people than by myself, but that's just my gaming style. Well, hello, Minnie Mayos. Yeah, my Squishmallow is May. She's the llama corn. And Squishmallows are amazing. They're like one of the best stuffed animals ever. Hey, Bounty Hunter, how you doing tonight? Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence and the support there, Boop Snooter. But just like everyone else, it doesn't matter how awesome of a streamer you are, we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. You still remember watching the video on YouTube? Yeah. Yeah, they're Aphrodite, PUBG. That's pretty much where it started for everybody, I think, is pretty much with that video. I will say that's probably where 99% of the viewers came, is from that strange little video that took its tour on the internet. Glad to hear that you're doing well, Bounty Hunter. But the flavor of tea is delicious. Well, thank you, Poop Sitter. And who doesn't like delicious? So I think that there's some other layers that add into all of this. Was the person who was asking you to sing happy birthday, was he your first follower? No, Gamer Breach, he was my 10th follower. So, still not very many. Crack an egg on my head? I'm not gonna crack an egg on my head. Do I ever have a viewer bash with 7 Days to Die? You mean like talk about it negatively? Is that what you mean? Hello, Angel. How you doing tonight? Oh. Yeah, see, this is why sometimes I clarify what, because people from different parts of the world use words differently, and I'm like, not sure what they're asking. So, like, have a party or a bunch of right now, we have a server for 7 Days to Die that you can gain access to through giving us support through the coffee shop server, which is the buymeacoffee.com/zebrapig. You can see the website listed at the top of the page, or you can follow the link down in the about, and it's part of the tiers of subscription for support. Otherwise, the viewer support and interaction that we usually do with 7 Days to Die is Mischief Maker. But if you want to play with us, then it's through the Buy Me a Coffee support. And I'm sorry to hear that you aren't able to sleep, Gamer Breach. That always makes it for a challenge. Because it is hard to feel well when you can't sleep well, and it sucks to not be able to sleep. And I find that oftentimes that we end up with people from Australia, or I end up viewing people in Australia, because I tend to be awake during the night shift, and I tend to stream on nights and all that, so we're awake at the same time. And people in my area tend to be asleep while I'm awake. So you guys tend to line up with my wake time more. Well, thank you for coming and hanging out, Aphrodite. You have fabulous breakfast. Yeah, I find that my hours do tend to cater to people who are on, like, the other side. Yeah, because I definitely have been night shift for so long that I don't see myself ever being a day person now. I've done night shift for 20 years. I will probably continue to always be a night shifter to some degree. And on this website link, can we in fact buy you a coffee? Well, that's what they call it when you do a one-time donation, is buying a coffee, because they do it in increments of like how much it would cost to pay for a coffee. So, sort of. But it's like Patreon. You can do subscription tier support, and with each tier you get like different benefits of like thank you for the support. And then you can also do the buy me a coffee, which is you can say, oh, I want to buy this person this many coffees, and it's a one-time donation. And we will have other things up on there. Like next week we're going to be doing the hat crocheting stream. That's next Sunday. So that's the hooking night. And then after the hooking night, I will be putting up the pattern for the hat on there so that people can get that as well. So that's the plan, assuming I can get it all together. But I'll give you guys more information on that next week. But that's the current plan. So It's like Patreon, but it's got some more stuff because you can do like one-time purchases. You can put up things for sale, like just a regular shop. There's like a gallery where you can look at all the different hats that I have. Stuff like that. Yeah, Bounty Hunter. I pretty much exclusively work nights. I get up at like around 5 p.m. and I usually go to bed around 9 a.m. If all things are going well in the world of sleep, and sometimes that's not the case. But if things are going well, that is my sleep schedule. And I have worked the night shift, which is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for the majority of my working shift, which I've been doing even when I was a CNA, so for a very, very long time. And how many days a week? When I was working at bedside, it was 3/12s a week, unless I picked up extras. And, well, how often I worked extras varied a lot. There was a stretch in my career that I was more often than not working 60 to 80 hours a week. Yeah. Being a nurse can be pretty brutal hours. Hello, Lily. How you doing? Ugh, I am sorry to hear that Twitch was giving you trouble. I'm glad you were able to get it to work, though. Who was my 10th follower? Oh, Gamer Breach. That was Carve7. Yeah, 12-hour shifts can be hard. I'm not a huge advocate for 12-hour shifts, especially in the nursing field, because the longer shifts you work, the more you get fatigued, and the more fatigued you are, the more likely you are to make errors. And obviously, that's a problem when we're talking about somebody who is making decisions in context of, somebody's health, well-being. You don't want them to be making mistakes. So them being fatigued, it can be very problematic. So I wish that we were doing shorter shifts for nurses then, but and hello, Dice Santa, but no, we don't sing the happy birthday to everyone on the stream. Oh no, Lily, you're still having problems with Twitch. I don't know why it's not working well. Slap, you complain at a 6 hour. I am at college to be a nurse. It's so draining, but I like it for the most part. Well, many mayas. There's a lot to be said about how different it is to be a nursing student than to be a nurse. And I'm not going to lie, being a nurse is very hard and draining in its own way. But it is a very different thing than being a student. I think that part of what makes being a student so hard, and I think this is true for college in general and not just nursing students, is that you don't just have your designated student time. You're going to class, and then you're studying, and then you're going to clinical, and then you're. So it's not just this dedicated time that you're doing your student thing, and then you've got time off. Once you start working, you can say these are the hours that I'm working, and you can choose to not pick up extra hours. And I will strongly encourage you as a new nurse to not fall into the trap of always picking up hours. Learning how to say no and saying no effectively and having those good boundaries between your personal life and your work life will be essential to thriving in your career over the long term. It will be easy to burn out very quickly if you work 60 and 80 hours a week. Yeah. I've been here for 2 minutes and already have to leave. Well, hello. They're underpowered, and bye. Hope you have a good night. Here it's max 8, and after that it's overtime. Yeah, so bounty hunter in America, they don't start overtime until you hit a total number of hours in the week. So I can work a 20-hour shift and it's not overtime. And it's totally legal for me to work 20 hours straight, which is mind-boggling to me, but we can do that. I can work a 24-hour shift as long as during that 24-hour shift, I have 4 hours that are dedicated to me being able to rest. And they don't have to be consecutive hours. So wrap your head around that one. So you can have a 24-hour shift if you get 4 1-hour rest breaks. Yeah. Yeah. Because that almost makes sense. And they don't pay you for those 1-hour rest breaks. So it counts as a 20-hour shift, not a 24-hour shift. Yeah, there's a lot of insanity here in the workforce. Permanently understaffed and underpaid, at least in the hospitals and hospice sense. Yes, Angel. It doesn't matter what field of nursing you are currently in. If it is direct patient care, it is understaffed and underpaid. Absolutely. And definitely overworked and often high risk. Like, people do not understand how absolutely high risk nursing is. There's nurses are more likely to be assaulted than a police officer, which is mind-boggling. But yeah, I'm more likely to be punched in the face than a police officer. I mean, not anymore, because I'm not a direct care nurse anymore. But yeah, the nursing field is really wild. Well, thank you, Gamer Breach. I really appreciate that you think of me as nice and kind. I very much appreciate that. I work tens, and I tell people I work with when I'm willing to do overtime. Yeah, Angel, you really have to draw clear boundaries. And it's super essential that you don't pick up extra time. And let's say it again. Why isn't healthcare free in the US? Yeah, well, we pay more for our healthcare than any country in the world, and we have some of the lowest healthcare indicators for quality indexes than most countries. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. And people are worried about nationalized healthcare costing more tax money. Well, yeah, it'll make your taxes go up, but then you won't be paying for health insurance, and you won't be paying medical bills, and. So, dude, like, we could literally pay half of what we're paying towards healthcare now into nationalized healthcare. We would get better healthcare, and nobody would go into debt for healthcare. And we would get better health care because all of that money, literally all of that money, or 99% of that money, because of Medicare and Medicaid, we know that some of that small amount of that has to go to like administrative costs. But really small, but none of it goes to advertising. None of it would go to profit, blah, blah, blah. We wouldn't have CEOs taking multi-billion-dollar paycheck home every year. So healthcare would cost us lots less, and we would get lots more. So sure, our taxes would go up, but we would be paying less money. Why would it matter that it was in taxes instead of in healthcare insurance? I don't know why that bothers people. So I have been put in charge for the audio and visual effects for the upcoming school play, and I'll be honest, it's a bit draining because I have to use my brain a lot. Lily, it's surprising how when you're not used to doing something or it's more intellectual activity than you're used to, how exhausting that can be, because we don't think of mental activity as activity, but our brains require a lot of energy to do their jobs. Absolutely. Like, everything that our brains do require neurotransmitters to be made, require glucose to be used. Like, our brains and our thoughts require fuel. So it's just as much a metabolic function as walking is, but we don't think about it that way. So yeah, it's absolutely exhausted, and I'm sure that you're going to do a fabulous job. Well, thank you for coming hanging out with this Gamer Breach. I hope you have a fabulous night. I get people where I work asking why I didn't go back to nursing school. Whew. Yeah, I frequently have people ask me why I didn't go on to be a nurse practitioner or why I didn't go on to be a doctor or whatever. And because I have several specialties and lots of experience, and I'm considered an expert in multiple fields and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, because I don't want to double my debt when I haven't already paid for my first college, you know, like, and then getting a master's in nursing is not going to greatly increase my income while it will double the amount of student debt I have. And I still have not paid off my student debt for my current nursing degree after having been a nurse for 20 years. I mean, it's mind-boggling. That's for me is the biggest reason that I have not gone back to school for anything. And what you have said is actually what I tell them. Getting crapped on by both patients, doctors, and hospital bullshit, physical assault, etc., etc. It's not worth it. Yeah. And I don't think that people really understand like what the nursing profession looks like right now. And when I say nursing profession, I want it to be clear that I it's not really just nursing. It's all of healthcare. But I haven't worked as a doctor, and I haven't worked as a X-ray technician, and I haven't worked as a laboratory phlebotomist. So I can't speak directly from that viewpoint. But the reality is that all of healthcare, even if you are a food service worker, a maintenance worker, it doesn't matter what you do in healthcare, you are not well treated, you are not well supported, you do not get paid what you should get paid for the amount of crap that you have to deal with. Just in general, they are brutal jobs with brutal hours, with requirements for working holidays, working weekends, you know, with shift work, all these things that are highly undesirable that you don't really get paid more for, not really. And then when you look at nurses and CNAs and, you know, being some of the most frequently assaulted, most frequently injured fields, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me. And when you look at CNAs where over half of them are below the poverty line, if they work one job and stay at 40 hours a week, they can't make ends meet and support their family. That's what are we doing? What are we doing? So the main problem is that I have to find a way to bridge the gap between the Adobe PC and the Mac as they use both. Oh, I'm sorry, Lily. I don't know whose bright idea that was, but that is a pain in the butt. You really should stick to like one system and all in. Well, at this point, Angel, I am not a bedside nurse anymore. I reached the point that I could no longer do the job for a lot of reasons because it was too physically demanding. They were not willing to accommodate my medical needs. They were not emotionally supportive of all of the things that were going on during COVID, especially. So, yeah, I reached burnout and had to walk away from bedside nursing, which is probably one of the most difficult decisions that I've ever made. And it's still really hard to talk about. Pardon me. But I do know that it is the best decision that I could have made for myself and for my patients, Because when you reach burnout, what people don't understand is that when you reach burnout, like, you legitimately have lost all capacity for empathy. You have nothing left to give. And what that means when you're a nurse is that when you have nothing left to give, this is a fundamental crisis in your ability to do your job well. Because everything that you were supposed to be doing is about giving to other people. You're supposed to be giving emotionally. You're supposed to be giving your time. Everything that you do as a nurse is about giving of yourself. And when you reach a point that so much has been taken of you that you literally have nothing left because the system is not giving you the time to refill your cup and to restore yourself that is necessary in that giving process, people really don't understand the brutality of what nursing burnout means, because it really does mean that if you continue to work in that state, you're going to do it where you are not feeling compassion and empathy for your patients, where your tasks are just tasks and they're not about taking care of people anymore. And in my opinion, it is probably the most horrible state that any person could be providing nursing care, which is why I chose to leave. However, I am in a position that I have the support and the ability to walk away. Many, many, many nurses do not have that social and financial support and option to be able to walk away from the field. And they have to choose between being that nurse and not being able to put food on their family's table. So they have to choose between not taking good care of their patients or not taking good care of their family. And I don't think anybody should be put in that position where they have to make that choice. And that's where a lot of nurses are right now. So they're choosing to stay working so that they can take good care of their families, and it's at a price that no one in the United States should be accepting. We shouldn't be accepting that this is the work environment that people are being asked to work in, where they have to make that choice. And it's just insanity to me. So, sorry. As you can see, this topic is still very raw for me. I'm still really working through all the trauma that I've endured through nursing, especially through the last years of COVID. So while talking about it is good and is part of the process, it is definitely still raw and definitely something that I can't talk about without a degree of emotionality to it. So I'm sorry for that burnout. I hit the stress wall and it broke my body down. I'm glad that you were able to see and make that decision to take yourself out of the situation. Yeah, Angel. I am glad that I was also in a position that I was able to recognize what it was. And I'm also glad that I was in a position that I was able to walk away when I needed to. But yeah, Yeah, I think that's about sums it up there, Bounty Hunter. It kind of sucks how it goes over here. We absolutely need a social safety net, and we don't have one right now. Oh, believe me, Bounty Hunter, that I 100% agree that it is okay to cry. And I have been doing a lot of it lately over the last, month since I have been taking time, away from nursing. Because, it's insane to me that the healthcare system does not think that nurses need psychosocial support, and healthcare staff in general need psychosocial support all the time, but especially during times of pandemics and other medical crises. The things that we have seen that we will never be able to unsee. the number of nurses that are going to have post-traumatic stress and the number of nurses that do have post-traumatic stress right now, statistically speaking, is higher than the number of people who have post-traumatic stress after having gone to war. And I think that that is an insane statistic. We should not have a higher post-traumatic stress rate than people who have fought in war. I think that statistic, more than anything, should be raising alarm bells to society and to this profession. And it is insane to me that the system doesn't feel like any of that warrants more psychosocial support, and why they can't understand why they are not able to retain nurses. And right now, the statistics are showing that about 1/3 of nurses who are actively working are planning on and trying to figure out how to leave the profession in the next year. With the number of nurses that we currently have, by 2030, we will be at a deficit of nurses where we will only have about 25% of the nurses that we need to meet the national need. That is fucking insane to me. So we are looking at losing nurses at a time when the need is going up astronomically. It's not sustainable. It is absolutely unsustainable. And they look at us and they say, well, why aren't you staying? Because you can't stay in a trauma situation and heal your trauma. That is the first fundamental principle of trauma care. You cannot stay in a situation that is causing you trauma and then be able to work through and heal your trauma state. You can't do it. That's like asking someone who is being physically abused to heal from their physical abuse while they're still getting punched every day. Because that's what's happening. Statistically speaking, the majority of nurses surveyed, it's about 90% of work shifts involve some sort of emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. That is insane. That is insane. And then they wonder why we have post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, we're facing abuse almost every shift we work. And then on top of that, we are seeing people in near death, dying, and traumatic situations without support. And those are the circumstances in which post-traumatic stress is born. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that it's not understood. On Friday, we had a meeting with our school resource officer because we were discovering career paths, and the tests we took said one of my best matches were in law enforcement. He talked about what burnout was, and I'll be honest, hearing him put it in the perspective really widened my compassion for everyone in healthcare, law enforcement, and just all of the people who take their time to help others. Yeah, Lily, I don't think that a lot of people really understand what burnout is. They think of it as, oh, it's tired. But that's not what it is. I mean, burnout comes with some really specific definitions, and it is not just you're tired of doing your job. I mean, it's so much more than all of that, and I will never do it justice if I just try to do it off the top of my head. So burnout consists of 3 symptoms: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a sense of low personal accomplishment. So emotional exhaustion is the symptom that most people think of when they think of burnout. And this is the state of being physically and emotionally exhausted by work stress, which is characterized by low energy, fatigue, depression, hopelessness, and helplessness. Depersonalization is the second symptom, and this is the symptom that is most concerning in context of nursing. The interpersonal aspect of burnout that manifests in unfeeling, negative behaviors towards others, and detachment from caring and the ability to interact with others in a normal and healthy way. Uncaring, unfeeling, negative towards other people. You're lashing out. Like, why would this be a good thing for nurses to be experiencing? And then the last symptom is low personal accomplishment, the state of negatively evaluating oneself as being incompetent, unsuccessful, inadequate. Consequently, employees exhibit low levels of contribution to their work, and they do not feel that their work has value, and therefore feel that investing themselves is not worth the effort. So they feel that their work is not valued, feel that their work does not contribute, and therefore put in less effort. Those are the three pieces of burnout, and it's fundamentally crushing the healthcare system. Our system is broken. We have 3 nurses in my factory with jobs at my level or lower getting paid more than when they worked in the nursing field with a quarter of the stress. Oh, yeah, Angel. Nurses in hospitals providing direct care get less wages than nurses who are working corporate, who are working supervisory positions, who are working paper positions, etc. It's insanity to me. And yeah, Bounty Hunter, when we have so many patients dying so rapidly in times of pandemic and in such horrific ways, it comes at a cost. Because I don't think that people understand what it means when someone dies from COVID. But their lungs fill up with fluid and you watch them slowly drown on their body fluids. It is not a comfortable way to die. And there are no drugs, and there are no treatments on this planet that can erase that feeling of slowly suffocating. And it's a really, really, really terrible thing to watch once in your life, let alone over and over and over again. So yeah. The cost of the pandemic has been very high. And for myself, I look at it and I am flabbergasted because I was never at an epicenter. I was never like at a place like New York or Chicago that got hit with crushing numbers of COVID. I can't imagine being at the epicenter of New York in the beginning of March when they had to make triage decisions about who got an event. I can't imagine. I can't imagine being that nurse to decide which of my 2 patients got to live and which didn't, because I had to decide who I hooked up to event and who I didn't. And how do you live with that choice for the rest of your life? Even if you make it on good clinical sound triage decisions, that decision will haunt you forever. Because you will always say, what if I chose wrong? Especially if the person you vented dies. You will always say, what if the other person would have lived? Pardon me, I gotta blow my nose. I'll try to be not too snotty on camera. Whoa. You mean to tell me I have to take my hand off the hot stove to allow my body to heal the bird? Yeah, Boob Snooner, your hand doesn't heal if you keep leaving it on the stove. Yeah, so I think that part of the challenge when we talk about burnout is that people don't understand really what burnout is. They think about just that first symptom, this emotional exhaustion, the tiredness, the fatigue. And there's a lot of ableism and there's a lot of toxic productivity in this country. Just the pull yourself up by your bootstrap bullshit. So when you talk about emotional exhaustion and the fatigue and the just, I can't do this anymore, it's, you just gotta work through it. Just push through. Well, that's really, really, really dangerous on so many levels when you're talking about taking care of people. I mean, just the fatigue and the energy levels being low, I don't think that people understand how dangerous that is. Like when your brain is tired and you're supposed to be deciding, like I'm doing a medication math to decide how much medication I'm injecting into this bag of fluid that's going to go into someone's IV. And I have to do this algebraic equation to determine how much drug to give you. And the math being off is the difference between whether or not you overdose and whether or not you live or die. You don't want my brain to be tired when I am doing that math. Even the exhaustion piece is not taken seriously enough and is downplayed way more than it should be. Because it really is a fundamental problem. Especially in this country. Like, Americans do not value rest and recuperation and social support and community the way that we should be. We just feel like you should push through everything and that you can, like, I don't know, grow fucking wings if you hope hard enough. It's like, no, guys, you can't just have more energy because your boss wants you to do more work. That's not how this shit works. There are absolutely limitations programmed into your body, and they exist for good reasons, and we should be respecting those limitations. The officer told us that he thought about quitting multiple times, but it just brought him right back again. Yeah, Lily. The thing about burnout and helping professions is that the people who choose helping professions, whether you are a firefighter, an EMT, a police officer, a nurse, any of those helping professions, you have this fundamental part of your person that values things like taking care of people, community, social support. And you also value being the person who is doing good work and feeling like you are contributing to society in a meaningful way. And you value yourself based on whether or not you are doing things that qualify you as a good person, which is, are you contributing to a good society? So your self-worth is often connected to your good deeds, and your good deeds is often connected to your profession. So it's this very complicated personality type of self-carers and care providers who get into these professions. And because of that, it is very difficult for these people to walk away from their profession when they should. It really, really was the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life to walk away from bedside nursing. The single most difficult decision I have ever made. Deciding to have surgeries was easier than deciding to leave nursing. And in all honesty, I should have left sooner. I pushed it to the point that I was in crisis, and I knew that I was approaching crisis. I knew that things were getting bad. I knew things were getting rough. I knew that I was having a hard time. But it was so hard to leave because it's so important to me. And I love nursing so much. As hard as it is, it's so much a fundamental part of who I am. that walking away is insanely difficult. Especially knowing that I will probably never go back. It is highly improbable that I personally will ever go back to bedside nursing. And I knew that if I left, that the likelihood that I would be able to go back, that it was going to be a forever kind of decision, made it that much harder for me. So, yeah, but many times nurses will burn out. They'll take 2 or 3 months off, which is not statistically enough time to heal from post-traumatic stress syndrome and trauma, even if it's acute trauma and not, PTSD. Acute trauma it's taken on average takes 6 months to heal. Post-traumatic stress, if you can reach a point of resolution and healing, is usually 2 to 3 years of care, which means that you can't be working that whole time. You can't take a 2 to 3 month break off and come back into it. Otherwise, following the metaphor, you're just putting your hand back on the stove while that burn on your hand hasn't healed yet. So that's what this profession does. And it's not just this profession. There's many of them. But again, this is the one that I can speak to. But I feel like in America, the workforce dynamic is toxic. And it is at its peak toxicity in the nursing profession. And I think that the reason that it is so bad is because you have a corporate for-profit system that is all about exploiting humans, and you have a group of professional workers who are all about being accommodating, helpful, self-sacrificing people. This combination means what? You have all these self-sacrificing people who just keep give. And these people who are quite willing to sacrifice you for what is profitable, and they're just going to keep calling those nurses, and they don't care. They just don't care. So they're just going to keep scooping you up and milling through you, but it's not sustainable. And what people don't understand about for-profit systems is that they don't care that it's not sustainable. If you make $4 billion over every year for 6 years, does it matter to you if that hospital then goes bankrupt and you never get to open another hospital again? You are set for life. What do you care if that hospital folds? Like, that's what people don't understand in the for-profit system. The corporate leadership is not interested in maintaining a healthy, dynamic, stable hospital. There's no investment in that. They don't care that it's not sustainable. Because as long as they're cranking out those high numbers of profitability, once you make billions of dollars of money, that money will make its own money. You don't need that hospital anymore in order to continue to make money off of the billions of dollars that you made off that hospital that has now imploded and no longer exists because it wasn't sustainable. Like, it doesn't matter to the corporate leadership that it's not sustainable. It was profitable, and it made them that financial foundation that makes it make money all by itself. They don't need the hospital to be existing for hundreds of years the way that society needs that hospital to exist for hundreds of years. Which is, to me, the biggest reason that we need to have it to be nationalized healthcare, so that the hospital's interests align with the patient interests and the healthcare provider interests. When the hospital interests and the patient interests don't align, what are we doing? What are we doing? That's just mind-bogglingly unethical to me. I don't know what we're doing. So sorry, I got on a rant, but so hiya, Make Sauce. How are you doing tonight? And you have a May too? Yeah, that's my llama corn. Her name is May. I love it when other people have a May as well. And hello, Cloud X Me, how are you? And I'm glad that you're finding this stream interesting. And hello, Daddy Mikey. How are you doing tonight? And yeah, there's a lot in the healthcare system in the United States that's absolutely not right. And I think that a lot of this nursing burnout problem is also happening with doctors. It's also happening with, you know, every other healthcare professional. It's not exclusive to just nursing. Again, I talk about it in context of nurses because that's what I am personally familiar with. But it is important to realize that it's something that's happening with all healthcare professionals. And the consequences are that because the healthcare professionals are burning out, that quality healthcare isn't happening anymore. So back to what we were talking about in the beginning of chronic illness, and when we talk about like why are people with chronic illness not getting the high quality health care that they should be getting, a part of this is because the healthcare providers who are expected to be taking care of these people are burnt out. So they're no longer invested, they're no longer emotionally capable, they're no longer listening to their patient with empathy and compassion, they're no longer able to go that extra mile and ask those extra questions. They don't have the energy to do all that deep dive research to say, what could this possibly be that's going on with this person? They just do the perfunctory tests, check the boxes to cover their license, cover their job, and say, okay, I've done my thing, and then look at this person and go, I don't know. Because they no longer have the capacity to feel and to care. Like, this is a fundamental problem in healthcare. And I think that if we look at it, it's one that is problematic, not just in the United States, but burnout is a problem worldwide. And it's because the nursing to a patient ratio is too large. You know, the demand is too big. The stress rates are too high. The support isn't enough. And I don't know what all the answers are, but it is not sustainable. And we can't continue to allow it to go this way. Bounty Hunter, it's not perfect here either, but damn. Yeah, I have definitely talked to people in other parts of the world, and I don't think that healthcare is perfect anywhere. I don't think that any country has come up with the perfect answer of how do you provide the perfect system of healthcare that meets every person's needs at a reasonable cost. I don't think that any country has come up with that solution yet. I think that we're very far from coming up with these kinds of answers. And I think most countries are facing a lot of the same challenges in that we don't have enough healthcare staff. How do you make healthcare more appealing? How do you make it less stressful? How do you give the healthcare professionals the support so that they can do what they need to do without ending up with post-traumatic stress, without ending up with burnout, so that they continue to provide high quality healthcare? You know, how do you do good triage so that they don't feel morally wounded, which is a huge contribution towards the whole problem of post-traumatic stress. Like, if you think about why you go into healthcare, like I went into healthcare because I love people and I want to take care of people. There's a moral outrage in me that I can't even explain to know that the system does not have that same goal. Well, you have a great night there, Sparrow, and I'm glad that you came and joined us, and I hope you can again in the future. And thank you, Nothing. I am glad that you like this stream. So, I mean, moral injury is all about this idea that you have this value, this moral set, this ethical set, and then you're being asked to do this thing that is in conflict with your moral values. And when that happens once in a while, we can usually justify to ourselves occasionally having to make decisions that are against our moral code. Because sometimes it is the right thing to do, even though it's, I don't know, or whatever. But when we are asked to do this on a professional level, day after day after day after day, like, how do you justify not being able to give a patient health care that they need, that's life-saving, because they can't afford it? How can you justify giving health care to somebody that's rich and not poor? How can we justify the reality that people who have color, who are people of color, don't get as good a health care as people who are Caucasian? Like, how do you justify any of that? It is so morally outrageous and wounding that how can you expect people who hold life as sacred and people as the most fundamentally important things in their lives to not incur injury cumulatively over time, when this is what we're asked to do over and over and over and over again? And it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And the cumulative cost is burnout. And I think the thing that's most mind-boggling to me about all of this is that over my 20 years of nursing, I have always tried very hard to advocate for my patient and to fight for the ethical principles that I believe in. And I have always struggled to make the system better, even if it's just in the little environment that I am working in, but have even fought on the legal level. And when I talk about these struggles and how hard it is and am kind of venting about it, what's most mind-boggling to me is that people tell me that I frequently get commentary about how I have too strong a sense of justice, that the answer to my struggle isn't that the system should change, but that I should lower my expectations for ethics and justice. I find that to be the most concerning and the most frustrating and demoralizing part of all of this, is that the healthcare profession has been so crushed that the expectation that it can get better is pretty much gone. That the answer of what they're telling young nurses coming in isn't, we have to fight, we have to advocate, we have to improve things, but is to, you need to lower your expectations. You need to have, less sense of justice, and you need to lower your ethical standards. I don't even know how to, respond to any of that other than to just, gape at them in a flabbergasted, because if that isn't, the voice of burnout, I don't know what is. Hello, someone who's here. How you doing tonight? Welcome to the Dazzle. It makes a lot of difference, let me tell you. I was recently hospitalized for a few days. The nurses made my stay amazing, forgot about everything that hurt. Yeah, I think that the difference between having really good nurses and really crappy nurses in your hospitalization is huge. And I don't think that people really understand the statistical differences of this. But if you want good outcomes in your hospital stay, the thing that's going to make the biggest difference is the number of times the nurse is in your room. Not the doctor, the nurse. Statistically speaking, the person who is the most likely to notice that you are having a clinical decline is your nurse. And they are the ones who are most likely, statistically speaking, to alert and raise the alarm and are most likely to prevent you from having a decline in your care, in your general outcome. So the single most important factor in someone having a good outcome in their hospital stay is having frequent presence of nursing checks. That just hourly visit at minimum. Nurse come into your room for a few minutes to lay eyes on you and see how you're doing. And that is almost impossible to do now. It is so almost impossible when you have 6 or more patients assigned to you to be able to go into your patient's room every hour and assess them. And it is the most fundamentally important thing that we do. And yet it's not valued anymore. It's considered fluff. Hey, I haven't been in your streams lately because I haven't been on Twitch for a while, but I am back. Well, welcome back. I don't know. I hope that you were doing well. And hello, Nick, too. How are you doing tonight? They were all sweet. I was kind of lucky. They weren't all very good or professional. 2 kept wanting me to give me a sponge bath. I mean, I don't think that you have to be like super impersonal. I mean, I tend to have a very casual and goofy style of nursing. I tend to be kind of a class clown, even when I'm nursing. But yeah, you do have to keep kind of a certain like distance with your patients. So it's kind of a weird balancing act. But I do think that yeah, I do think that it's weird and awkward if you're new to nursing. Like, how do you engage with people in these moments of, like, they're naked, you're not, or they're really sick, and how do you address that? Or there's their moments of vulnerability, and it takes a lot of practice to be able to interact with all of that in a casual and not overly casual way. And someone who is here, yes, we play Minecraft sometimes, and we do have a Minecraft server that people can play on with us, and that's something that you can join us on if you are subscribing through the Buy Me a Coffee, and the link is down in the About, or you can see the link at the top of the page here, or the website, it's not a link, at the top of the page here. So anybody who goes to the coffee shop and subscribes at the Llama Corn or higher can join us on the Minecraft server and play Minecraft with us. And thank you, Ghost Razor. We're gonna water the face off. To be honest, I am not. Last night my stomach was very warm, thought nothing of it until I woke up like 1 hour later. Felt like I was going to throw up, and I vomited a bit violently on the floor 2 times. I hate barfing. I woke up at 7 a.m. and I threw up. I am so sorry. I don't know. I'm sorry that you're feeling awful. I mean, my personal opinion is that having nausea and vomiting is worse than being in pain. I hate vomiting more than about any other symptom that I can ever experience. I hate it so much. It's awful. Absolutely awful. So I am super sorry that you're not feeling well. And it sounds like someone who's here is also feeling sick. Boo. I'm sorry that you are not feeling well. Unfortunately, this is, at least in my area, the time of year where people are generally sick. And nothing's sick too. You guys are all sick. You're all play bearers. We're all sitting here together stewing in our germs. I guess it's a good thing that we're not physically in the same room, or we would all just be like sharing those germies. I will say that's one thing that I will say has been kind of interesting about the pandemic has been the increased use of social media and Zooms and streaming and all of that has been pretty cool and amazing, and has allowed us to connect in ways that we didn't used to. And I like that it is normalized internet socialization, which used to have a really negative connotation to it. And we used to view it as like somehow lesser than socialization, which never made sense to me, but that's how it was viewed. So I think that that's one thing that that's good that's come out of all of this. I don't tend to play on Xbox or PlayStation. I tend to play solely on my PC. Every now and again, I play on a console, but I will say 99% of my gaming is on my PC. Yes, germs ads. We all have them. Even when we are healthy, we have a microbiome of germs that swim around us that we can share with other people. Your stomach has been feeling weird after it's not warm and haven't threw up for the rest of the day. Blah. Well, if it lasts for very long or gets worse, I would say definitely go see your doctor. But do your best to stay hydrated. Lots of frequent little slips of fluid. You don't want these germs. Yeah, well, unfortunately, sharing germs comes with any kind of human interaction that involves physical touch. We share germs all the time. Sometimes it doesn't even require us to touch each other. That's the worst part. How often do I stream? Oh, and thank you for saying that I'm amazing. I appreciate that. Nothing. So I stream Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. I shouldn't have to thought about that so hard. But there we are. The only days that I don't stream are Friday and Saturday right now. So Sunday is my chat night. We just have a topic that we generally talk about, and I engage with chat and oftentimes get off topic because I don't stay focused super well. And then the other 4 nights we play games. Monday we kind of cycle through games. Tuesday right now is Grounded. Wednesday, we're playing through Elder Scrolls Online. And on Thursday, we're playing 7 Days to Die with Mischief Maker enabled, so you can cause chaos and mayhem. You just feel tired mainly, and I'm not really hungry after I barely ate any dinner except for a bit of chicken. Yeah, don't push it. When you're feeling nauseous, the best thing you can do is drink as much as you can. Focus on nutritional beverages if you can tolerate them. Health shakes, electrolytes, milks, those kinds of things. And just small amounts as frequently as you can. And remember that your immune system works its best when you are sleeping, and the reason that you feel tired when you are sick is because of the amount of energy that your immune system takes when it's really geared up. So facilitate that and do as much sleeping as you can. Help your body get better. What is my favorite Netflix series? Well, I don't tend to watch a lot of Netflix. Currently don't even have a subscription to Netflix. But in general, I don't tend to watch a lot of shows. I think the most recent Netflix... I'm hydrating! I think the show that I most recently watched was Sandman, based on Neil Gaiman's comic, which was really good. So I stream starting at 6 p.m. and go until 10 p.m. and that's Eastern Standard Time. And you can also see my schedule down in the About, which should convert to your time zone. So that will probably be more useful, because I don't know about you, but I am terrible at converting to my time zone. So if somebody tells me a time that's not in my time zone, I'll be like, what time is that? And Bounty Hunter wants me to tell you about the hat gangs. So I have hats, and people in the Dazzle have preferences as to which hat is their favorite. Hello, Buzz. How you doing tonight? I think the one that won the most votes, though, there, Bounty, was the purple unicorn. I think that was the most popular hat most recently, though. So... Watering the face all, thank you, I don't know. I don't know, Bounty. I'm pretty sure that it was the purple unicorn. It had the most cakes thrown at it. The never-ending debate over which hat is the best, which is apparently one of the most contentious things on this channel. So, when we're talking about, like, all of this, burnout and nurses and healthcare providers struggling to give really good care and the system not being well structured, it really amounts to healthcare not being provided in ideal ways. And we have this majority of our population, 60 to 65% of people who have chronic illness, who need frequent and ongoing healthcare management in order to maintain control of their symptoms so that they don't have adverse outcomes related to that chronic illness. So one of the challenges that comes up with this is that when you don't have anything left and you are experiencing that second symptom, that depersonalization, where you are unable to interact with people in normal and healthy ways, and you are experiencing a state of unfeeling, lack of empathy and compassion for other human beings, the likelihood that you are going to dismiss someone or gaslight someone is really high. And it's not even that you're going to do it intentionally, it's just that you are not emotionally equipped to deal with other people's needs. Your needs are not being met. And I think that's what people forget about, is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's these foundational needs that have to be addressed before you can start taking care of other people. The two basic needs is making sure that your biological needs are met. So you have to have food, water, your food and water and shelter, all of that. Your biology needs to be taken care of. So your body has to be taken care of. Then that second tier is a sense of safety. And what people don't realize is that healthcare people are not getting those two tiers met because they're not getting appropriate breaks. They're not getting sleep. They're not getting meals. They're not being able to go to the bathroom. They're not being able to get drinks. So their biological needs are not being met. So that first tier is being denied. And then because in 90% of shifts worked in direct care, there's some type of emotional, physical, or sexual abuse experienced, their safety need is not being met. And when those two foundational needs are not being met, the third tier of socialization can never be achieved. And that's what people forget, in that foundation has to be met before you can start doing the higher stuff. And the really cool stuff doesn't happen until you meet the highest tier of self-actualization. And that's where things like problem solving, innovation, that's where that stuff happens. And that's where things like really good differential diagnosis would happen. So if we want doctors and nurses to be in a position to really sort out why people are sick, we need to make sure that that full Maslow, the hierarchy of needs, is being met so that they can reach self-actualization. If that foundation is not being met, there's no way that they can meet the social need, let alone get up to self-actualization. And I think that's a large part of why we're seeing so many people in the chronic illness community reporting experiences of medical medical post-traumatic stress and experiences of being gaslighting or experiences of being dismissed. It's because providers don't have what they need in order to be able to take care of patients. And it's a systemic problem. Well, nothing. Thank you for coming and visiting. I hope that you have a fabulous night, and I hope that you can make it back and visit us again. I mean, and we tend to only think of like the Maslow hierarchy of needs in context of like when someone is mentally ill and, you know, we need to like help them get better. But these are needs that exist for every human being on the planet in every context of their lives. Doesn't matter if you're at home, whether you're being a student, whether you're working, these needs exist. And if you're going to be able to do anything other than be in that fight or flight survival mode, then you have to make sure that those survival needs are being met so that your body and your brain can focus on things other than staying alive. Because if you feel like your existence is threatened, how can you possibly focus on anything other than trying to stay alive? Like, how can you give to other people when you feel like you're not being fed, you're not sleeping, you really can't even take a pee break, people are beating you up, etc. Your needs aren't being met. Now, this isn't to say that I feel like it excuses the misbehavior and the bad care and the bad behavior that we have seen in the healthcare profession. I don't think that it excuses it. But what I think that it means is that we need to look at this problem as the systemic problem that it is. We can't expect that addressing the problem as a disciplinary issue with an individual is going to solve the problem. When you do a survey and literally 90% of nurses say that they're experiencing some or all of the symptoms of burnout, not, yes, I feel burnout, but when they are given a burnout assessment survey that is a diagnostic tool, and then a psychiatrist is evaluating them for symptoms of burnout, and depending upon the evaluation, it's anywhere between 85 and 90% of American nurses are in a state of burnout. It's not surprising that they're failing to provide the level of care that every patient deserves to receive. So what do we do about this? You can't, 85 to 90%. That's flabbergasting, isn't it? Majority of those nurses are considered to be in a mild state or what they call functional burnout and not at crisis burnout level. However, that's still really problematic. That means that the majority of nurses who are providing care in the United States are experiencing a degree of depersonalization, which means that they're struggling to have compassion, empathy, and caring for the patients that they're providing care for. So, hello, the actual Axicon. What are we talking about? We are talking about the state of the healthcare system and chronic illness and how these two things are interacting with each other and why it's relevant and why it's important to be looking at things from a systemic picture. So right now, there's a lot of push for holding nurses and healthcare providers accountable for their behavior. And don't get me wrong, I do think that we need to be accountable for the decisions and the choices and the actions that we are engaging in as individuals. However, what is resulting is that nurses and doctors are going to jail because they're facing criminal charges because of this push for accountability. They are going up for disciplinary review. Some of them are getting fired for it. Some of them are like, screw this, and are just quitting because they're so frustrated with the system they feel like they can't win in, and then are being disciplined for when they feel like they can't perform what's being asked of them. So the result of this push for individual accountability has been a reduction in the amount of staff in the workforce, because it's been resulting in making the behavior lead to criminalization, lead to firing or quitting. So the result has been an increased exiting of the field from some fashion or another, which has resulted in more of the problem that we're already having. And one of the largest problems that we're having is that there are not enough healthcare providers to provide the care that needs to be provided. When most doctors have 200 or more patients assigned to them, imagine what the implications are when a doctor leaves a hospital. Those other doctors have to take on those 200 patients. That's a lot of patients. That's a lot of patients. So it has profound consequences. And hello, Little. How are you doing today? So it only adds to the problem to focus on accountability. Most of the ICUs at hospitals that I have worked at literally only have on night shift 2 ICU doctors, and they literally work opposite of each other. So if that other ICU doctor is terminated or quits or goes to jail or whatever, the expectation is that that other ICU doctor is going to fill in until they can hire another doctor. And that means that that night doctor, for some undetermined period of time, is going to work 7 days a week. And we're talking 12-hour shifts, guys. We're not talking 8-hour shifts. We're talking 7 12s. Because what's the alternative? What do you say when you're responsible for the health and well-being of people who would die without you? What is your ethical duty to these patients? What do you say? I'm sorry, they can go without a doctor. Well, no, you ethically can't say that. You have an ethical binding to provide them care. So you end up working these insane number of shifts, number of hours, and yes, 200 patients for one doctor is a very common practice. So yeah. So you end up in this really insane situation where people feel like if we hold providers more accountable, their behavior will get better. And the reality is that their behavior is going to get worse. How do they keep up? Poorly. That's the answer. They get worse at their job because they're more stressed and they're getting more burnt out and they're showing more symptoms of burnout and they're hitting more and more and more closer to that crisis state. And they're showing more symptoms of depersonalization. So they're having more and more difficult of a time having compassion and empathy for their patients. So they're more likely to gaslight. They're more likely to dismiss. They're more likely to rush through their patient encounter because they have so many people to see. They're more likely to not really listen because they're just so fucking tired. If you've worked literally 40 12-hour shifts. Like, I remember one ICU doctor that while we were trying to hire a second overnight ICU doctor, ended up working 46 night shifts in a row. And he was so tired. Trying to make decisions for these critically ill patients. But what was the alternative? The alternative is that they had no one. So a really tired, burnt out doctor was better than nothing. But is that going to be our new standard? Is that what we want? Is that the standard? Is that the stage that we want to set for our healthcare? And hello, not so cod God. How you doing? I mean, upright and breathing is about what this expectation is now. So over the last 5 years, the social push has been to have higher accountability. And the healthcare system has accommodated this. And the result has been less healthcare providers. Because more accountability means that you have to discipline people for their poor performance. And because they have nothing left to give and they don't have it, it's not an issue of I'm choosing this behavior. If you do not have emotional capacity, you don't have the option to do something different. So you can't give what you don't have. Like when your cup is truly empty, even if you're pulled into the office and you're disciplined for your lack of empathy and compassion, you can't go in the next day and suddenly offer empathy and compassion because there's nothing in your cup to give. So that means that your repeat disciplinary stuff will inevitably lead to termination because you cannot meet that expectation because you're set up to fail. So the push for individual accountability only results in exacerbating the problem. So if we're going to solve the systemic problem that has two presentations where you see these nurses and doctors in burnout crisis, that's the first presentation. You see these doctors and nurses were just absolutely burned out, overwhelmed, and we're screaming at the rooftops about how awful everything is and how terrible our lives are, and we're bailing like rats off a ship. The other presentation that you're seeing of this as a systemic issue is that you have chronic illness patients who have lost faith in the healthcare system, who are talking about being gaslit, who are talking about having been dismissed, who are talking about not receiving high quality care, not being taken seriously, and all of that is true and valid. As a chronic illness patient, I have experienced all of these things, and it is so honest and true. So what is happening is that this majority of the population, that 60 to 65% of the adult American population, has lost faith in the healthcare system. So the majority of Americans no longer believe that the healthcare system is working for the patient, is capable of providing good care for the patient, and is even interested in helping the patient. And oftentimes has gone so far as to villainize healthcare providers. So we have these two presentations of this single systemic problem. But most of the time, people are talking about them as if they're two separate issues, when in reality, they're the same problem. As long as healthcare providers are burnt out, they will be incapable of providing high quality healthcare. You are playing Titanfall 2. I'm not familiar with that game. What kind of game is Titanfall? So the solution to making sure that people with chronic illness are not experiencing being dismissed or experiencing medical gaslighting and not having all these really negative experiences within the healthcare system is the same solution as how we help the nurses and the doctors. I don't know what that is, but we have to systemically restructure healthcare in a way that the healthcare providers are supported and the healthcare providers are put in a position that they're able to do their jobs well if we want them to succeed. We have to put them in a position where they can succeed if we're going to see them providing good healthcare to the majority of their population, which is chronic illness people. It's a mech game based around IMC. I don't know what IMC means. And militia. But it's mechs. Nice, nice. Well, I do think that that's part of... Well, you have a good night, Bounty Hunter. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. I appreciate you being here. It's really good. Glad to hear that there, Cod Scott. It's always nice when you find a game that's amazing. So they need to stop with the insane for-profit system. Well, I agree with that. I don't think that that's the only thing that needs to change. But I do think that the for-profit system is a fundamental factor in why the American healthcare system is broken. I am a huge advocate for nationalized healthcare. I feel that if we went to nationalized healthcare, we would see a big improvement in our healthcare system. And I think that that would be for a lot of reasons. I think that it would solve some of the moral outrage, if not all of the moral outrage that doctors and nurses are experiencing in the healthcare system right now. I think that we could set a better precedence for how we triage our resources. Because right now in the United States, primarily the people who get care are the people who can afford care. It doesn't matter how sick you are. It doesn't matter how likely you are to survive. None of that. It's just whether or not you can afford the care. If you have the money, you get the care. If you don't have the money, you don't get the care. I mean, and the data is out there. The statistics and research is out there. It's very well proven that in a for-profit system, the triage for healthcare is based on whether or not you can afford healthcare. And that's just not the most ethical way to decide who should be getting healthcare. The reality is that we are going to have some kind of triage system because there's always going to be more people who need healthcare than there are resources to provide that healthcare, at least for right now. And a large part of that is because we don't have enough providers to provide the care that's needed. So how do you address that? Well, there's a couple things that I think that would need to happen. I think that we need to go to nationalized healthcare, so we remove the for-profit system. I think that we need to reevaluate how we do triage, and I think that it needs to be based on the medical principles of triage rather than on for-profit, so that we're evaluating who gets care based on who is most likely to survive if they receive the care they're getting. Is that a flawless system? No, but it's definitely a more ethical way to decide who gets care than based on what money you have. I think that we need to also look at how we do research so that research is more equitably based, so that we're looking at research from all races, all ethnicities, all genders, all perspectives, so that when we're providing care, it's with a full understanding. Because right now, the majority of medical knowledge we have is based off of being a white male. And when I have a person of color or a female patient, I don't really know how to take care of them because the research that has been done on the human anatomy and physiology is, for the most part, been done on white men. And that does not translate to people who are of color or people who have a uterus. It's not equitable. It's not the same. And we found this to be proven when we look at people who have heart attacks. The majority of heart attack research is on white males. And when we compare that to women, lots and lots of women were dying from heart attacks because they don't present the same way as men. And yes, white women are researched more than women of other ethnicities. Yes, this is absolutely true. Biscuit Tinhead. Women are not researched as much as men, but white women are researched more than women of other ethnicities. Absolutely. And that's why I say that we need it to be more equitable all across the board. We need it to be all genders. We need to have better transgender research. Like, we are doing gender reassignment surgeries and we're doing hormone replacement surgeries, hormone replacement therapies, but then we're not doing the research to see what the long-term risks for those procedures are so that people can make these decisions based on full knowledge of the medical implications of the decision that they're making. We're not doing any kind of assessment of are there different risk factors if you are different gender, if you're bigender or trans, or some type of transgender, do you have different statistics? We don't know, because we've never done any of that research. So it's not just about male and female, it's about other genders too. And the complete and total lack of equity in our research is mind-boggling. Isn't the care for white women is the same for every race and ethnicity? Well, Gemini, I guess I'm not really sure exactly what you're trying to ask, but the answer is no. If I think that what you're asking. Okay, so biologically speaking, women of color and women who are Caucasian are biologically different. And one of the ways that I know of is the way that things present on your skin. And the way that, say, breast cancer will present on a woman of color versus a woman who is Caucasian can be very different, because the way that it will change the colors of your skin is very different if you are pasty white and pale like myself versus if you are a very dark, rich brown skin, or if you have a very olive tone skin. That's going to look very different for all of those different skin types. But when we're given that education, we're only taught what breast cancer skin lesions look like on white skin, on the pasty white me skin. So if I'm looking at a lesion on a Asian or a Caucasian individual, I don't know what I'm looking for. I've never seen a pressure ulcer, and I don't know what it looks like because there aren't photos of it in my education textbooks. They're all on Caucasian individuals. So the different biologies matter. And also, if you just look at the different risk factors, it's been shown that what little bit of research across ethnicities has shown that there's different risk factors with different ethnicities. People who are male men, of color, are more likely to have problems with high blood pressure. Don't know why, but they are. They're also more likely to have sickle cell anemia. And knowing these things is important so that when you start to see symptoms, you're correlating it to what's most likely to be the problem, so you can look at those things first. And we don't look at like drugs and all of that. When we do research on medications, it's usually white men who are getting the medication. And again, how that affects the biology is distinctly different based on your ethnicity and your gender. So we're not even performing medical research in an ethical and representative way. So that plays into our practice. So how can I provide equitable care when at the fundamental level of research, it's not even being done in a way that sets me up to provide equitable and good care? And this is why we see that women of color are more likely to have problems with labor and delivery, are more likely to have die in labor in this country, and are more likely to have infant mortality at time of birth than a white Caucasian female. So there's definitely differences. And some of that is because of bias in the way that we take care of people. And some of it is what I call systemic inlaid bias, in that we just don't know how to take care of them because what we're taught is based on this Caucasian principle. I think that we are all doomed anyway. The elite in charge don't care about us. Well, I think that Biscuit, that I don't think that we're doomed in that. I do think that we have allowed a way too much corporate influence into our government. I think that we have allowed way too much of, I think we've become a corporatocracy. I think we've definitely become all about the separation of classes and all of that. And do I think that that is a distinct problem in our country? Absolutely. And it's been a problem globally for a very long time. This is not exclusively an American problem. Racism and elitism is been a problem since colonization was a thing and began and all of that. And historically that's been a thing for a really long time. So absolutely, that whole elitism and the way that racism plays into elitism is absolutely a factor in this. Do I think that we are doomed, and do I think that we can't heal the wounds? No, I think that we have the option to heal the wounds, and that we always have the power of choice and change. And I think that we have made progress. But what I think that we have to keep in mind is that the damage of colonization and the damage that elitism and racism has caused has been dealt over centuries. This is not a problem that was created overnight. It's not going to be a problem that is solved in one generation of people. It's going to be a problem that takes centuries to heal. It will probably take us longer to heal it than it took us to create the problem. But we are moving things in the right direction. I really do believe that. And I have to have faith in that. I have to believe that humanity has the potential to get better. And if we can't believe in that, then I feel like, what's the point of moving forward? Hey, Cod Scott. I don't know what you're talking about with S-Box. We as humanity never really learn from our lessons and just repeat mistakes. I think that there's some degree of truth in that, Gemini. I think that we are slow learning, and I think that there are some degrees of repeating history that is a certain degree of inevitability. But I think that over time we can heal these wounds and that we can make things better. I think that the fact that the majority of people are not for things being the way that they are is a really good sign. Like, we're not okay with things. We're fighting against things. And I think that as long as we continue to fight for it, we can make it better. I just don't get this constant attack on white man. Some is justified, but a lot isn't. As a white man, to look around and you are being blamed for everything, you start to become jaded, and jaded men with no sense of purpose become desperate, and that is dangerous. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Because I'm not really sure how to catch you up on why white men are being blamed for a lot of things. I think that you're just going to have to go back and do a lot of research in history. Because colonization really centers around white men. And the harm of colonization is vast and enormous. And do I think that white men are to blame for everything that is in society? No. Do I think that it is something that absolutely needs to be evaluated and addressed? Absolutely. There's not equity in our society that is very real. It very much needs to be addressed. And I understand that it is difficult to constantly hear that your class of people, your group of people, is not trusted, is not really liked, and is being asked to make fundamental changes in the way that you do things. But I think that those conversations are also necessary, because I think that the way that things have been being done are harmful and need to change if we're going to make progress in society. And as far as becoming jaded, I think that we have long since been in the category of jaded for every group who has not been treated equitably. And what the white male is feeling, the white cisgendered person is feeling right now is what every other person has been feeling for centuries. That pressure of being disliked, that pressure of pushback, that pressure to change, that pressure to be something different. And that's what every other group of people have been feeling for centuries. So, I mean, as far as being jaded goes, that's a choice that you make. It's not a result of your being asked to change. I just don't get how you can blame what happened on the past on me and my skin color. I'm not blaming what happened in the past on you or any other individual in the current time. What I am saying is that we as individuals now need to own our accountability in where we are at, and we need to own the accountability in what we're doing right now. And the reality of what we're doing right now is that we are not doing research equitably. That's what's real. That is absolutely what is real. That the majority of the research is still being done exclusively on white cisgendered males. That is a statistical fact. And it is reasonable to demand that people of all types be included in medical research. I have a uterus. I do not have a prostate or a penis. My hormonal biology is completely different than a cisgendered male's. I think that it is completely reasonable that research be done on all people. Do I blame you for the system being currently set up that way? No. Is that your fault? No. Is it my fault? No. But we've inherited the system, and it is now our responsibility to make it better than what we received. It is now my responsibility, your responsibility, to make it better when we give it to our children. And part of making it better is meaning that we give equitable care to all genders and all people, all ethnicities, and that they are represented in both research and in their healthcare. So I do think that it is our responsibility to create change for the better. Even though I did not create the problem of healthcare, it is my responsibility to make healthcare better. Why? Because I am a nurse. Why? Because I am someone who receives healthcare. Why? Because I don't want my daughter to get crappy healthcare. I don't want her to receive the level of healthcare that I have received. I don't want her to also experience medical post-traumatic stress and gaslighting and lack of pain control and all of those things, and to not have healthcare that's based on actual medical science. Because I want better for the next generation. Not because I caused it, not because it's my fault, because I have the power to change things for the better. And things are better when they're equitable. I'm sorry to hear about your loss, buddy. I hope that you are able to get the support that you need while you're going through your grieving process. Thank you for stopping in. Holy crap, I'm dealing with all of those things now. Hello, a Metalhead Medic. Zero rights. Seriously, if you ask him why and how women in Arab world have no rights. Well, Gorilla Turbo, I don't live in Arab, so I specifically never talk about other countries. I stick to where I have experienced things. So I stick to America and I stick to my experiences in America because I really can't speak to other parts of the world very well because I have never been there. But I do see in this country, in the United States, that there are things that can be done better. And one of the things that we can do better is that we can provide health care that is reflective of all the genders and all the ethnicities by doing research on all the groups equitably. And it's really not that hard to do. It's just not hard to do. It's just a matter of when you're signing people up for research, you make sure that you get an even distribution in all the groups of people for both the control and the study group. It's just not hard to do. There's zero reason to not do good research this way. There's no excuse for it. And how is this in any way, shape, or form an impact on white men? How is this negative to them when it means that your wives and your daughters and your neighbors are all going to get better health care and that your family is going to be there for you to support you for a longer period of time? The gaslighting and lack of treatment, being told I had cancer almost one a year, the healthcare side anyway, yeah. So Metalhead Medic, yeah, the healthcare system is very broken right now, and I think that we need to make a lot of improvements in it on a lot of fundamental levels. Hope someday in the future we get free healthcare like Canada. We are the richest country, but capitalism affects us so much. Yeah. So, a zillion drugs. I agree. I am a huge advocate for nationalized healthcare. We could easily spend half the amount that we spend on healthcare in our for-profit system and get better healthcare than we're getting now. If we look at our healthcare indexes, which are the areas of statistics that tell us whether or not healthcare is doing well, so like infant mortality rates, which is how often infants die in the first year of life. If you look at labor fatality rates, which is how often women die in labor. If you look at life expectancy, which is the average length of life in the nation. If you look at obesity rates, any quality of life medical index measure, America is not doing as well as other countries, and yet we spend more on healthcare than any other nation. And it's because of the for-profit system, because a huge chunk of what we are spending on healthcare goes into the pockets of a corporation. When you have CEOs who are taking billions of dollars of profit of this healthcare revenue, and it just goes into their personal bank rather than into the healthcare system, we're going to spend more. Well, good night, Gorilla Turbo. Thanks for stopping in, and I hope that you sleep well. If your life is bad, doesn't mean you need to try and bring others down to your level. So, Biscuit, I don't know why you feel like this is trying to bring people down. How is doing research equitably in any way, shape, or form going to do anything negatively to white men? Research should still be done for white men. Nobody's saying that it shouldn't be. It should just also be done for women and people of other ethnicities. So how is that in any way saying that white men don't matter, or that white men shouldn't get care, or that in any way, shape, or form something should be less for white men? We're not saying the standard should change for white men. We're saying the standard that white men have is the standard that every gender and every ethnicity should have. It's like if you lose your job, you lose health care, and if you don't have health care, then you die. That is exactly how the healthcare system works in the United States. That insurance is connected into work. Work is all about productivity. If you don't work, you don't get health care. If you don't have health care, you don't get, if you don't have healthcare insurance, you don't get the health care, because we triage based on who can afford it. That's statistical fact. Absolutely, drugs. Yep, that's how it works. I mean, the reality is that those who have the money get the care. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that the people who are getting the care shouldn't. It's just that we should be raising the level up for the people who are not getting care. And we should be raising the standard from this abysmal acceptable level to a higher minimum level. So like, let's say healthcare can be rated 1 out of 10, and currently the bar is set at 1 being an acceptable level of care, quality care. I'm saying that 1 shouldn't be an acceptable level of care. I'm saying that everybody should be at an 8. Everybody should be getting high quality health care in the country that is spending the most money on health care. Why are we spending the most money on health care when the majority of us are getting level 1 health care? That's what doesn't make sense to me. And thank you, Naruto Stoves. Gonna do a wiggle. And even then, you get medicine you need when you can, but then you need other medicine for that medicine, and so on and so forth, because business do care more about money. Insulin shots are worth more here than in any other country. Oh, insulin is a disaster. I mean, the profit rates on insulin is absolutely staggeringly mind-boggling. I mean, it's like pennies. I think it's like 25 cents, but it's less than $1 for certainty that it takes to make insulin, and then they charge insane numbers. It's insane. I mean, like, Humulin N costs 22 cents to make, but the average person is charged $35. Like, why is that? Why does it cost 22 cents to make and then you're charged $35? Like, what? And the average cash price for insulin increased 54% over the pandemic period. I mean, it's insane to me. All of it is just insanity. And that's the part we, the people, pay taxes for, medicine like insulin, and they change us from that, what it costs to make, even though we paid for it to make. Yeah. I mean, so this is that struggle of how do you achieve wellness with chronic illness. So the idea of wellness is you can't cure chronic illness, but you can reach a state where your symptoms are well controlled and that you're living a well, happy life. And that's this idea of wellness, right? Like, that's a reasonable medical goal, right? So there's a lot of barriers to this in reality in our current current social environment. So the first one is that healthcare and work are inexorably connected. And when you have chronic illness, your ability to work is impacted. And let's first say that with 60 to 65% of Americans having chronic illness, the reality is that the majority of individuals who have a chronic illness are not disabled. They are working. So there's this weird myth that if you have a chronic illness, that you're leeching off the system and that you're like, it's just not. Like 60 to 65% of Americans are not on disability. That's just, the numbers don't add up. So the majority of people with chronic illness are in the workforce, and the majority of them are full-time. But the challenges that this presents is being able to get time off to go to work, to go to appointments so that you can manage that illness the way that you need to manage it. Having sick days because you have chronic illness. So there's going to be times that no matter how well your care plan is, and no matter how good your control is, you're going to have days that your symptoms impact your life and impair your ability to function well. And America does not afford us very many sick days. Many jobs don't even give us any. So there's that. So then there's this challenge that because employment and healthcare are so connected, the reality is that we can't. Our job being in jeopardy means that our healthcare is in jeopardy. So if we want good healthcare, we have to work full time. Even if our health doesn't really allow us to work full time. Like, even if we financially wouldn't otherwise need to work full time, like we could afford to work 30 hours a week, but because we need the insurance, we need to work 40 hours a week, which is really too much for our chronic illness. We can't make that decision for our health because we need the insurance. So there's this challenge in balancing to reach wellness because employment and healthcare insurance are connected. And then if you have too many days off because of your chronic illness, you can and will get terminated at will employment. They can't really do much of anything about it. And most states have gone to at will employment, which means that the Disability Act doesn't really protect you anymore. So now, if you could be terminated for any reason, if they can't really prove that it's explicitly because you have a disability, and by the way, if you have a chronic illness, you don't necessarily have a disability. So even if they fire you because of your chronic illness, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily discrimination and against the law of the American Disability Act. So there's that, like, interesting foo-fa there. Because a breaking attendance policy, even if it's for your health, is reason for termination and grounds for termination, and they can do that. It doesn't matter. So there's this challenge of how do you achieve wellness in an environment where work productivity is and it's become like toxic productivity, where your personal value is connected to your ability to be productive, and your healthcare is connected to your ability to be productive, and your productivity is greatly impacted by your health and wellness. So there's this flux back and forth between your ability to work and your ability to get healthcare, but how much healthcare you get will dictate how well you can work. So it's this constant balancing act of making sure that you work enough that you get the healthcare that you need, but that you're not working so much to put your healthcare in jeopardy. Like, it's not a balance I have ever managed to achieve. Hello, Royal Bull. Welcome to the Dazzle. And hi, Biking Flappa. How you doing today? Thanks for stopping by. I mean, and then when you add into this the systemic problems of medical care for profit, where the corporate for profit goals do not align with patient goals, and the nursing burnout, healthcare burnout situation that's going on, all leading to poor quality healthcare. How achievable is it to achieve and sustain wellness in this current setting? And with 60 to 65% of Americans having chronic illness, this is a fundamentally important question, because the reality is that they are the majority of our workforce. And if we can't maintain the functionality and the wellness of 60 to 65% of our population, how are we going to support and maintain our economy as a country? Because the majority of our working population has a chronic illness. Whether it's diabetes, asthma, seizure disorder, doesn't matter. If those things are not being well managed and maintained and are not sustained at a wellness level, that the person can be a functional adult in society because their symptoms are controlled and well managed, then they're not going to be able to be good workers, and they're not going to be able to contribute to the economy. So there's this cycle of all of these things being interconnected systemically, contributing more and more to all these problems. So nurses being burnt out and doctors being burnt out lead to crappy healthcare. Crappy healthcare and healthcare being connected to the workforce and employment make it more difficult to achieve medical wellness for the people who have chronic illness. People with chronic illness represent the majority of the workforce. Because they're not having their healthcare needs met, they're less likely to be able to achieve wellness. So they're less likely to be able to go to work and be good workers and do good work. And therefore, the economy is going to struggle. Like, it's this death spiral where all of it is completely unsustainable. And it all comes back down to this idea that we have allowed healthcare to be for profit, and we have allowed the corporatization of a fundamental human need to be for profit rather than to be a governmentally provided and guaranteed provided service. And it impacts everything, just the way that chronic illness impacts everything. It impacts the way that we socialize with each other. It impacts our ability to do our jobs. It impacts how well we can have relationships, how likely we are to have children, how well we can raise those children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want over half of the population to be contributing adults to society, you have to make sure that they can achieve wellness. And right now, in the climate that we have, where our healthcare system is really in crisis and it's not sustainable, I don't know how achievable it is for people to reach wellness and sustain wellness. I mean, as somebody with chronic illness, I am constantly asking questions of how much do I have to work in order to be able to afford my health care? I'm constantly asking, can I afford this current treatment? Can I, should I take this day off to go to this appointment? Should I do this thing or that thing? And I know the system really super well. Imagine what these decisions are like if you don't know how to navigate the healthcare system and you don't know how to get the most support financially and socially for your medical needs. I mean, I don't even know how difficult it would be to navigate if I didn't know the system as well as I do. And I face a lot of challenges navigating the system, and I know it pretty intimately. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge barrier unto itself. I mean, and in all of this is the question of medical autonomy and our ability to make decisions for ourselves. Because when we allow healthcare insurance to exist, we allow healthcare insurance to be the people, a corporate for-profit system who do not have the same alignment of goals and the same values as the patient, to be the people who decide whether or not you get healthcare. Because they're the people who decide whether or not your healthcare gets paid for, which fundamentally means that they're going to decide whether or not you get that medication or you get that procedure, because that's the deciding factor of triage. Remember, like, if you can't pay for it, you're not going to get that care. So if it doesn't matter really how much you need this surgery, if you can't afford to get the surgery, you're not getting the surgery. So if your insurance doesn't cover it because they don't want to cover it because they don't get profit out of it, then these non-medical people, for-profit people, are now allowed to make decisions about our healthcare. So where has our medical autonomy gone? We don't even get to make decisions about our own bodies anymore because that's been taken away from us because of medical insurance. Complaints about healthcare in America, which has the best healthcare system in the world. Well, Loogie, I wouldn't say that America has the best healthcare system in the world. I will say that we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world. So, because how do you decide who has the best of something, right? Like, I think that if you're going to look at whether or not we have the best healthcare system in the world, then you need to look at measurable indexes. So we have these things called healthcare indexes that tell us what the statistics are, and those are measured by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is the OECD, and it's a group of countries that all put together their data so that it can be compared statistically across the world. And if we look at America compared to other countries, we do not perform well. So right now, the United States ranks 33 out of 35 OECD countries in the world of the number of deaths per live births in this country. So we have the most infants who die during birth, or almost the most, 33 out of 36 countries. But we pay the most for our healthcare. So that doesn't make us the best healthcare country in the world. So looking at obesity, we have literally the highest rate of obesity. We're the number one in the world for the rate of obesity. So we definitely don't have the best healthcare in the world for that one. Life expectancy, we are number 28 out of 36, so we don't have the best metric there. Japan is one of the countries that pays the least for their healthcare, and they are number one for life expectancy in the world. And they have 80.7 years of life, while we get 78.6. So these metrics tell us more about how well our country is doing medically than how much we're spending. So I would argue that we don't have the best healthcare system in the world. We have the most expensive, and those are two very different things. So what are my thoughts on kids taking puberty blockers? Okay, so there isn't such a thing as a puberty blocker. It's called hormonal therapy. And we've been using hormonal therapy for a large array of things for years. And my question is, does it matter to you what those hormonal therapies are prescribed for? Because I would argue that statistically speaking, something that is going to prevent someone from dying is a relevant reason to provide a treatment. And adolescents who are untreated transgender, who are not supported through their care, are 28% more likely to die from suicide than adolescents who are not transgender. 28% is a really big fucking number. That is a high mortality rate. Any other disease and disorder, any other disorder that had a 28% rate of people dying, of children dying, would be considered a medical atrocity. But instead, because transgender makes us uncomfortable, because it makes us uncomfortable, we're going to say that these children should be allowed to die. But we'll give those same hormone blockers to cisgendered girls so that they will develop better breasts. We'll give those same hormones to cisgender girls so they won't grow facial hair. We will give those same hormones to cisgender girls so that they can regulate their hormones for a more regular menstruation cycle. All things that have zero mortality rate. So I would ask you, from a clinical perspective, Loogie, even a social perspective, Loogie, how you can say that it is okay to give a cisgendered female child, as you would label them, an adolescent, a hormone for a zero fatality disorder, and that's okay, but then one that has a 28%, but you never bring that one up. That's not the one that you talk about. You specifically talked about puberty blockers. You didn't say, I'm against adolescents getting hormone therapy. You said, what are your thoughts on getting puberty blockers, which is specifically talking about transgendered adolescents. So we should let children die. That's your opinion. We should just let children die because they have a disease that you don't understand. Okay. Your lack of compassion is disturbing to me. Because the reality is if we were talking about diabetes, you would never think that a 28% mortality rate was acceptable. I got it all wrong. Well, then please explain to me how it's not a lack of compassion to allow 28% of people to die. But 28% of a group of people with a disease to die. What makes these kings think that they're the opposite gender? It's called gender dysmorphia disorder. What makes them think that they're what makes somebody transgender? It's called gender dysmorphia disorder. It's a disease. Yes, it's a mental illness, Loogie. Absolutely. It's in the DSM-5 if you look it up. It's a mental illness. It comes with a mental illness diagnosis in the DSM-5. See, and this is what frustrates me. A lot of you guys are really against treatments, but you don't know anything about it. Okay, so it's in the DSM-5. It is a mental illness, and it's called gender dysmorphia disorder. Yeah, it's a mental illness. It has a very high mortality rate. So finding God and repenting has zero impact on mortality rates. So there's that. And the reality is that the impact of Christianity will actually increase mortality rates because of the lack of compassion. Like what we're seeing right here in this conversation, which is why I converted away from Christianity. Unfortunately, there, Ender, what we're seeing here is an individual who is lacking compassion for people who are different than them. And we're done entertaining that in our little world. All right. Because what's statistically real and what's scientifically founded is that gender-affirming care saves lives. Whether we understand or agree with care isn't relevant. It doesn't matter if a disease makes us comfortable or not. If a disease is killing people, it warrants treatment. That is what healthcare tells us. That's what science tells us. And if we aren't going to follow science, then what are we following? Whim? Are we going to base healthcare on whim? Because if we're not founding it on science, then we're founding it on nothing. The only thing that makes sense is to base healthcare practice on the principles of science. And when we see a high mortality rate associated with a disorder, then science demands that we have interventions to prevent that mortality rate, whether that disease is diabetes, asthma, or gender dysmorphia disorder. That's what good healthcare principles are. We are in the practice of preventing people from dying. We're not in the practice of judging people because they're different than us. That's not my job. There's a lot of people who have come into my practice that I don't like. I took care of sexual offenders. I took care of people who raped women, who raped children, who murdered people, who beat the shit out of people. Do you think that I liked any of them on a personal level? Nope. Didn't matter. They were still human beings who had medical problems, who deserved care. And it is my ethical duty and responsibility to save people's lives, not to determine if they ethically deserve to continue to exist. That is not my role as a healthcare provider. It is our job as healthcare providers to make sure that people don't die. And we need to base our interventional practices on science. That's it. Anything else is snake oil and hogwash. And right now, there's a lot of demand for it. Why? Because sometimes science makes us uncomfortable. And yeah, there's a lot of science out there that makes me uncomfortable. It challenges a lot of my fundamental core beliefs. But that doesn't make it less science. That doesn't make it less real. That doesn't make it less valid. And instead of challenging the science of it and challenging the implications of what we should do, we need to reevaluate those core ethics and reevaluate our fundamental beliefs. Because gravity is still going to exist whether or not we deny it existing. I mean, science don't care how we feel about it. So one of the biggest challenges with looking at things from a scientific perspective is removing that emotional investment that you have to your beliefs. And the reality of science is that it's always going to challenge your beliefs because we come to build a worldview of what we think world is like. And the more transformative the scientific discovery, the more it's going to challenge the beliefs that we hold. And it's happened over and over and over and over again. I mean, if we look at throughout history, from the discovery of DNA to the discovery of germs to the discovery of gravity to the discovery of the world being round, science has constantly and continuously challenged our beliefs about what is real and what is not real and how the world works. But that doesn't make it less valid. Hello, Phoenix. How are you tonight? Welcome. And welcome to the Dazzle. And I think that as a religious person, because I am Wiccan, so I hold religious beliefs, that it is really, really, really important when we are making decisions on clinical practice that we do so completely separate from our religious values. Now, you as patients, or even me as a patient, can make decisions with your religious views in mind. Like, if you believe that it is unethical to accept any kind of tissue donation, then fine, don't. Nobody's going to make you. You don't have to if you don't think that that's okay. then make that based on your ethical and your moral foundation, your religious beliefs. That's fine. But it's not okay for me to have that religious belief and to impose it on you as a patient. That is not okay. Because in this country, we're supposed to have religious freedom. And that means that you as an individual get to make your choices based on your religion, not mine. So I, as a healthcare provider, don't get to impose my religious beliefs on you as an individual. That's what the separation of state and church should mean. Unfortunately, I don't feel that we've achieved that in America. I think that Christianity is very thoroughly embedded into American politics and American law. But that is the idea that is behind all of this. Hello, Sarah Nix. How are you tonight? I hope that your stream went well. And I'm going to see if I can do a shout out. I'm like so sketchy about getting this right. All right, so it looks like you were playing Monster Hunter Rise. How did that go for you? You just had a 7.5-hour stream. Whew, that's a long one. And hello, folks who came in with Sarah Nix. I am sure that you had a fabulous stream with Sarah. She's an amazing streamer. And welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about chronic illness, and we are talking about the healthcare system and how those two are interconnected and how they are systemically presenting us many challenges in this country. You also played Genshin and Minecraft. Nice. Nice, nice. And I'm glad to hear that your stream went well. Awesome. And welcome. I mean, and this is where medical autonomy comes in. Like, medical autonomy, this right that we're supposed to have, means that we get to make decisions based on our own moral principles and ethics. It means that I can make my medical decisions based on my moral values that are based on Wiccan beliefs, but that someone who is Catholic can make their decisions based on their Catholic beliefs, and that someone who is atheist can make their healthcare decisions without the influence of religion based on their ethical and moral principles. That's how medical autonomy is supposed to work, that each individual is supposed to be able to make their medical decisions for their own person based on informed consent for themselves, based on their own ethical value and moral set, which is varied and complex and diverse in this country because we are a melting pot. And there are so many religions and cultures that are represented in this country that there are a lot of different values and beliefs about what should and shouldn't be done to the human body. And then none of those values or beliefs are right or wrong. None of them. They're all okay to have and to uphold as individuals. But not a single one of them should be upheld as a systemically supported value for the healthcare system. The healthcare system should be built and founded solely upon scientific evidence and should be neutrally towards religion and those value sets. The ethics should be based off of the principles of medical ethics in context of scientific principles. Looking at it from any other perspective is immoral. So kind of what you're saying is that people can believe in whatever their religion tells them, but they shouldn't push it on people who might not think the same way. Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. If you want to pray when you're dying, I'm going to let you pray when you're dying. But I am not going to give you any kind of Wiccan priestess blessing unless you ask me to. If you know that I am a Wiccan priestess and I am at your bedside as your nurse and you say to me, I am Wiccan and I would like you to give me a Wiccan blessing at the time of my death, I will do so because I will give you the comfort that you asked to be given. I will also hold your hand and cry with you if that's what you need me to do. I will get you a priest from the Catholic faith to give you last rites. I will call a Latter-day Saint priest to give you a blessing if that's what you need in your time of suffering. But I, as a Wiccan, will never, in your time of death, give you a priestess blessing as a Catholic patient. That's not okay. Like, that's just not okay. I should never be saying that I, as a provider, ethically know better than you. And my religion and my faith has more value than yours, and therefore you should do things my way. My culture is more important than yours. The hubris of that is mind-boggling to me. And that is exactly what is happening when people are trying to say that people who are transgender should not get health care. Because the science tells us that this is a fatal disorder that has a very high mortality rate. And the science tells us that treatment is highly effective and that the individuals who receive gender-affirming care are very unlikely to die. Has a very high success rate in treatment. We would wish that we were that successful in treating other physical, other diseases like diabetes and substance use disorder and just other diseases. We wish we could have the success rate. Gender affirming care saves lives, and that's what healthcare is in the business of doing. And if that means that I call you by a different pronoun, what a simple intervention with really low side effects. Like, I'm not gonna kill you by calling you by a different gender. I might kill you by giving you a medication. That's always a possibility. And people are okay with the possibility that I give you an insulin drip for diabetic ketoacidosis, and that insulin drip could kill you. Absolutely could kill you. If I don't titrate that right, I could completely kill you with that. You are depending on my ability to perform that titration well in order for you to stay alive. Because if I don't titrate it high enough, you die from ketoacidosis. If I titrate it too high, you die because of too much insulin. Your life depends on how well I manage that medication. And everybody's okay with that. Nobody has a problem. But if I do an intervention of simply calling you by a different gender and a different pronoun by a different name that has no known side effects, none! There are no known side effects. None! There are very few interventions in healthcare that have no known side effects. Why the fuck wouldn't I get on board with an intervention that has no side effects? Fuck yeah, I am all about an intervention that I can't kill somebody with. That also has a really high success rate. It's mind-boggling to me. But that's what the science tells us. So yeah, I'm all about it. So we got, looks like duck hat. I was trying to translate the emoji. Duck hat. Boop. Well, hello, I am Bell Pepper and Rona the Fifth. Yeah, it's hard when you just join in and we're doing a wiggle. Thank you, ads. So we're talking about chronic illness, and we're talking about how it fits in with the systemic issues in healthcare and autonomy. And autonomy is always our right to choose, and how systemically, you should have that right to choose in chronic illness or even acute illness, and how society impacts that, and how society can affect our rights and our ability to make choices based on social pressure, based on laws that are implemented, etc. We can lose our ability to have medical autonomy. And there's also the reality that medical autonomy can be greatly affected by our ability to afford care. So health insurance has a huge impact on our medical autonomy. So there's a lot of factors that go into this idea of, can we achieve a balance and a state of wellness when you have chronic illness? And people look at people who have chronic illness and they think that it's solely their job, when the reality is that there's many things that are involved, including society's view of how you interact with, you know, other people. So when we look at mental health, especially, the reality is that mental health is greatly impacted by how society treats you, and how society treats you, whether they give you social support or whether they are treating you like you are unwanted, will greatly affect your outcomes. And we're seeing this very dramatically being played out in the individuals who have gender dysphoria. You know, right now, gender dysphoria is really negatively viewed in society. There are individuals who are literally being murdered because they have identified as transgender, which is having gender dysmorphia. Because they have identified themselves publicly as having a chronic illness, they are being murdered. This is mind-boggling to me, but that is what's happening in our society. And all of this is accumulating to the reality of people who have a higher death rate by suicide because they don't feel wanted, accepted, or well supported in in their society. So gender dysmorphia is a term that describes a sense of unease that a person may have because of a mismatch between their biological presentation and what they feel their biology should be. This most often presents as a difference between their biology of gender and their biological presentation of gender, but it is not exclusive to that. So dysmorphia is a big thing, but gender dysmorphia specifically is related to gender. So it's basically the clinical term for being transgender. And hello, Galaxy. How am I? I'm doing well. How about yourself? And welcome to the Dazzle. I mean, the transgender umbrella is really huge and broad, and not everyone who has an identification of I myself am bigender. I feel like my biology is female and my brain is male, but this does not cause me any distress. I don't feel that it is a problem that they don't match. I don't feel that there's any requirement for them to match. I have no distress over the mismatch of my brain and my body. So I personally do not have gender dysmorphia because there is no distress or unease related to the difference between what I perceive in my body and what I perceive in my brain. So there's no unease or dissatisfaction, distress, or dysfunction related to this mismatch. So while in general, this is kind of the clinical thing where we talk about transgender, it doesn't apply to everyone who is transgender. But that if somebody is looking at having hormone therapy or gender reassignment surgeries or anything like that, they will have to have the diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to qualify for any kind of treatment for that. They won't be able to get hormone therapy or any kind of gender reassignment surgeries without having the mental disorder diagnosis of gender dysmorphia, because those are treatments for gender dysmorphia. They're not technically treatments for transgender, if that makes sense. So they're not quite completely overlapping terms, but they do have a pretty significant overlap. But I think that it's really important, and I think that transgender issues really highlight the importance of separating out religious views from our decision making when we look at healthcare. Because we are a melting pot, and because our society is so diverse, and because there are so many religions and cultures with so many different values and ethics, and so many different opinions about what is sacred and what is profane, we can't have laws that are defined by a single religious set. Instead, we need to have laws that protect individuals and then allow individuals to make decisions based on their own individual value set. So if you believe that gender reassignment is unethical, okay, don't do it. If you think that that is a sin to God, all right, go pray to your God and don't get gender reassignment. There's nothing saying that you have to accept that treatment. It is available to those people who feel that it is something that they want to do. And it in no way impacts your choice and your ability to refuse that care, even if you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria. And this is why medical autonomy is so important, is because it allows us to make individual choices based on our individual religions, our individual cultures, and our individual ethical values. And that is what allows us as Americans to have the freedom of religion and the freedom of our culture that is supposed to be one of our freedoms in this country. And the only way that we can uphold that is by making sure that our healthcare system bases all of the healthcare provided off of science, offers scientific treatment to everyone, and then allows individual patients to make their choices based off of whatever ethical foundation they want to. I mean, you can literally just say, nah, I don't feel like it. Like, you don't even have to justify it to me. You can just be like, meh, I don't wanna. Too much work. Like, that's your right. Medical autonomy. Woo! You can say no just for the sake of saying no. I mean, and I think that what people don't understand is that we need to protect medical autonomy because it is one of the most fundamentally important medical rights. It's not just about issues like transgender care, and it's not just about being able to choose to have an abortion. It's also about really basic things. Thank you, water in the face hole. Wild's blurry. Like, let's say I, as a healthcare provider, say that you should receive a certain medication because I've diagnosed you with this thing. And you have all these symptoms, but this medication comes at a really high risk and has a lot of side effects that are just going to destroy your quality of life. As it stands, you have the right to refuse that medication and look for other types of treatment. Without the right of medical autonomy, I would legally be allowed to tell you you had to take that medication and force you to take it against your will. Like, medical autonomy is what allows us to decide for ourselves what we're going to do with our bodies. Body autonomy, medical autonomy are the same thing. Body autonomy extends to outside of the healthcare setting. Medical autonomy is specifically to just medicine. But this idea that we own our bodies, that we as individuals are the only people who have ownership and command of our bodies, that's a really fundamentally important right. And think about the implications if that right is undermined. If I lose the right to make decisions for my own body, not just medically, where does that go next? Does that mean that they can then decide that I have to keep working? Does that mean that they can decide what job I do? Does that mean they can decide what food I eat? Does that mean they can decide where I live? Does that mean they can decide what clothes I wear? Does that mean they can decide how I cut my hair? Does that mean they can decide everything else for my body? Like, where does that line get moved to when you start saying other people get to make decisions for your body other than you? Where do you draw that line? If medical autonomy is not absolute, if body autonomy is not absolute, and I am not the only person that gets to make decisions about what's done to and for my body, where does that line get drawn? And think about the fundamentally important issues that body autonomy protects. Body autonomy protects things like labor rights. OSHA is founded on body autonomy, the protection of like not, being exposed to things without our knowledge, like work hazards and work chemicals, is based on body autonomy. Being able to choose where you live is based on ideas of body and principles of body autonomy. Being able to wear clothes that you want and tattoo yourself and wear jewelry and being able to do whatever colors I want on my nails, all based on principles of body autonomy. So this is a fundamental human right that we don't think about much in this country, but that is so core to healthcare that we talk about it all the time. We talk about it when we have a confused patient who refuses healthcare, and we ask about the ethics of, do we make them take this care that's life-saving, or do we respect their right to body autonomy even though they're cognitively impaired? We debate these things in medical ethics all the time, because body autonomy is so sacred. Like, we should never decide for someone else's body, ever. Like, that is so, like, fundamentally at the core of medical ethics. And it should be at the core of social ethics, and sometimes I'm not sure that it is. So yeah. Whew. And I think that all of this is why I think that it's super important that religion and government stay separate, and that they need to be further separated. Because whether we really want to admit it or not, the laws in this country are still heavily founded upon Christian values, and they shouldn't be. Like when you look at the laws related to marriage being between only two people, that's a Christian value. There are many religions that say you can have multiple spouses. There are many cultures that allow for polygamy. Christianity does not, and currently in the United States, polygamy is illegal. What is the ethical reason for that? There really isn't one. It's just a religious foundation that shouldn't exist, because we're not supposed to be a religious country. Like, we need, I think, to further work on separating Christianity from our legal system, because people should be able to decide for themselves. That's the whole principles of freedom, right? We're supposed to be able to decide for ourselves, and people should be able to do shit that I don't like. Like, there are plenty of people out there who are not comfortable with transgender, and that's okay. They don't have to like me. Yeah, isn't "In God We Trust" printed on our money? Yep, X. There's a lot of "In God We Trust," and I don't think it should be there. I don't think that God should be in any of our legal formatting. I don't think that we should be swearing on a Bible or any other religious book when we're sworn into a legal office. I don't think that we should be... I don't think that there should be a Pledge of Allegiance with God. I don't think that there should be any of the religious flavoring in any of our laws, and religious values shouldn't be there. They just shouldn't be a part of it. And hello, Mr. Crow the Bob. How are you tonight? But yeah, for better or worse, this country was founded by Christian, leaders and by a Christian society. And while they did try to separate the Christian faith from the from the government, they didn't entirely succeed. But I think that they did a good faith effort, and I think that we should continue towards improving upon what they started. Because the reality is that the more that we limit everything based on this one world view, the more that we are going to have these conflicts within our society of the desirable and the undesirable, of the us and them, the others and all this stuff. Instead of looking at us all as humans, when the laws clearly favor a certain group, it is hard to not believe that that group isn't the favored, preferred class, that they aren't the elite. So yeah, it's kind of this weird dichotomy of things where we have this value in this country that we have this freedom of religion and this separation of church and state, but if you really evaluate our law set, it doesn't exist. And if you listen to the political landscape and how there's many people who run for office based on their religious platform, and how their religious view even comes up is entirely beyond me. It shouldn't even be an issue of topic. It should be, these are the things that I'm going to work for. These are the things that I stand for, and their religion shouldn't be relevant. But people vote specifically based on religion, and it's not how the system is supposed to work. Is there actually a massive political divide in America, or is that just the media being dramatic? I'm going to say yes to both. So research is showing, statistically speaking, that... Going to water the face hole? Thank you, Mr. Cal the Bob. The research reflects that people's views are becoming more decisive, and that people are becoming more anti the other political party. So people who are Democratic are more likely to stay in a survey that they don't like someone who just because they're a Republican, and vice versa are true. So I do think that there is this divide in America where we have gotten into this idea of us versus them, that this largely two-system party has led to this idea that if you aren't on the right team, you are the enemy. You're either on my team or you're the enemy to my team. Has definitely become an American mindset, which has led to a division in our dialogue. It makes it so that it's very difficult to have conversations with people, because if you are starting those conversations with the premise that they are the enemy, there's a huge chasm to try to close before you can actually start problem solving. So yes, I think that there is a divide in America, but I don't think the divide exists quite the way that the media is portraying it. I don't think that the majority of Americans have as divisive a view set as the media portrays. Like, the majority of Americans, I don't think, have these polarized views. Most people actually don't fall into one extreme camp or the other, and I think that that's also a kind of misnomer that people think that you're either Republican or you're Democratic, and that's like where you kind of fit into the scheme of things, and that's not really how it works. There's a lot of nuance to how all of that kind of shakes out. And I think that if people did take a survey, that they would find that their political affiliation is not as extreme. And when surveys have been done about the different political typologies, people don't have this huge divide because they're not generally one or the other. And if you're interested in what I'm talking about, there's a great survey. You can find out what type of political typology you are. Most people are not Democratic or Republican. Like I myself am an outsider left. So most people haven't even heard of that. So there's a lot of diversity in our view set. So I think that it's not as extreme in practicality the way that the media wants it to be. The media presents it as if half of Americans are all Democratic and half the Americans are pure Republican, and that we have these super polarized views, and that's just not how it really is. Like, you might vote Democratic, but you might also share values with Republicans, or vice versa. And that's generally, people have this shared value set between where the two parties sit. It is really not common to be totally polarized in your view sets. So yeah, I guess my answer is yes and no. But I do think that there's definitely a lot of this, like, your camp, my camp, based on how you vote. And I think there's way too much of that bullshit going on. This, like, if you didn't vote for the same president that I did, you're a bad person. Like, that's definitely happening in this country, and I think that that's definitely toxic, and it does not set us up to be in a position to have good, functional, problem-solving conversations where we can meet in the middle. We're not going to meet in the middle if we think of each other as the enemy. So I think that that's very problematic, and I think that we need to work on having better dialogues about our disagreements so that we're not villainizing people who have different viewpoints than us. You know, I converted from Christianity to Wiccan, but that doesn't mean that I think that everybody who's Christian is an evil person. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because I don't share those value sets doesn't mean that I don't think they can be good people because they share those value sets. And I think that we need to stop with this idea of, if you're not my religion, you're a bad person. If you're not my culture, you're a bad person. If you're not my political party, if this us versus them is becoming very much a thing in America. And I don't know how we combat that, but we need to think of ourselves more as a global, you know, diverse population of people. Like, we're all human. We're all human. That's our group. We're human. We're chaotic, we're messy, we're complicated, and we're layered, and we are in multitude of groups, and we're just all hot messes, and we're human. We're all complicated, messy humans, and none of us have all the answers, and none of us have perfect morality or any of that. We're just all fucked up, complicated human beings, and I think that that's what we need to be looking at each other with, is that we're all just imperfect human beings. Because that's what's real. Rather than this us versus them stuff that we're absolutely seeing. And I think that we're even seeing that in healthcare, where we're starting to see like an us versus them between patients and healthcare providers, where the healthcare providers are starting to feel like the patients are lying and subverting and drug seeking and manipulating, and and attention seeking and all these things. And the patients are starting to feel like the healthcare providers are villains and not interested in providing good care, and are working for the system and are only in it for the money and not compassionate and blah blah blah, like all these things on both sides, where we're there's this division of the us versus them, rather than recognizing that you're in a broken system together, that you're both victims within this broken system, that you're both suffering within this broken system, and how do you guys come together to solve the problems within the system so that everybody within that system has their needs met and is elevated to a better standard. And I think that that's how we need to start looking at problems as a whole. That's how we need to look at problems in healthcare. I think that's how we need to look at problems in our society. We need to start looking at things systemically, and how do we lift each other up? How do we elevate everything together? How do we say, okay, we're all in this together. We're all victims. We're all suffering. We're all struggling. So how do we, as a group together, lift all of us up to a better standard? Like, how do we raise that bar? And until we can be looking at it systemically and looking at it as a whole and looking at it as an interconnected problem and looking at it how everyone is affected and how can everyone improve, we're not going to see systemic change. And if we can't create systemic change, it won't be lasting change, because trying to make individualized change isn't working. It hasn't been working for a very long time, and it's not going to magically work. I mean, we've shown this to be true in business. We've shown this to be true with social problems. We've shown this to be true in trying to fight pandemics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't deal with systemic issues on a systemic level, you do not create systemic change. So, we need to start coming together, and we need to stop creating these walls between us and these little microcosms of us versus them. And we need to all just be human. Imperfect, messy, chaotic humans. And I'm not going to like the majority of humans that I meet. And that's okay. And I don't need to have all of the humans over for tea, and they don't need to all be my friends in order for me to work for their benefit as a whole. Like, there's a difference between this person is your friend and this person is a human worthy of rights and respect. Like, just because I don't like someone and I don't want them to be my friend and I don't want them to be included in my personal life because we don't share values, doesn't mean that I can't advocate for them to have rights and respect. And I think that we're occluding the two. There's definitely completely groups of people that I don't want to be my friends and I don't want in my personal life, and I don't want them in my home because I don't share values with them and I don't feel comfortable in their presence and I don't like them. And that is okay. It is 100% okay, healthy, and normal to not like every human being on the planet. But that doesn't justify not also saying that they deserve rights and respect because they're human. Because every human being, whether we like them or not, deserves rights and respect. Fundamentally, just because they're human beings. And we need to just raise that bar. We just got to raise that bar. In so many areas, we just got to raise that bar. I mean, I don't know how to address so many of these issues. I mean, I focus my conversations in healthcare because that's where my expertise is. I mean, I recognize that there's social issues in the workforce. There's social issues in equity in general. There's social issues, on so many levels. But they're outside of my expertise and they're outside of my purview. I mean, I can't really, on any expert level, talk about economics and talk about war and talk about any of those things because I don't have the education for it and I don't have the knowledge and the expertise. That doesn't mean that they aren't problems. I just stick to my wheelhouse and my area of expertise, which is in healthcare. But I feel like a lot of these concepts on a basic level, on a conceptual level, really extrapolate to the systemic problems that we're facing nationally and globally. That we need to start looking at problems systemically, and we need to start looking at things more community oriented, and we need to look at how do we come together as a united people rather than in all of these diverse broken groups. Because one of the realities that we need to recognize is that when we are trying to defend our rights, it means defending the rights of everyone, even the people that we don't like. That's how defending rights means. It doesn't mean that only your religion gets protected. It means that all of the religions get protected. And it means that every religion that exists gets protected, whether it's a religion we're comfortable with or not. Whether it's a religion we share values with or not, doesn't matter. They still have the right to exist. Hello, Dileski. How are you doing? But I think that that's the complexity and the systemic view that we're currently lacking in this country, is that we want to look at everything on personal accountability, which is not going to solve any problems. And we want to look at everything in a very microcosm way that just really isn't going to really solve the problems. And I don't know that I have any like immediate good solutions, but I do think that we need to start talking about things if we're going to start problem solving and start coming together as a people. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. Well, I hope that your girlfriend has a beautiful birthday in whatever fashion is fabulous from her perspective. And 21, whoop! God, that was a long time ago. It always amazes me what like age milestones we mark and why we mark them as milestones. And I've always thought 21 was a weird one. And maybe it was because I was such a like rebellious child that I started drinking before it was legal. I did a lot of stupid shit when I was a kid. But yeah, I think the whole like these magic ages is super weird in general. This like you wake up, I mean, you go to sleep like 17 and you wake up 18 and now suddenly you're an adult. Your whole world has changed, right? And like, once again, you go to sleep 20, you wake up 21 and everything is different. Or 1 minute passes on the clock and it's just like so weird to me. I mean, and I feel like there really isn't the same milestone again. Like, I don't feel like that happens again, at least in my perspective, until you're like 65. And that's when you're like part of the like old people club. And again, you 1 minute passes on the clock, or you go to bed and you wake up and suddenly you're now part of the geriatric population, or you're part of the seniors. So I don't know. It's yeah, you definitely grow the same each day, and it's like these things definitely have this slow development, and we mark them like super dramatically on the calendar, like they happen overnight, and it's just, and we make responsibilities and privileges just like poof, there you go, and I'm like, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a better system for it, but I just think that it's unusual. And I think that it has an adorable little bee emote. He is super cute. That is one of the things that I super enjoy about Twitch, is all the like personalized emotes and being able to see all the amazing emote art that people come up with. The creativity around that is just amazing. There's so many fantastic artists that just have so much stuff it's just awesome. Yeah, we're having a great night. We're gonna be wrapping up here soon. We don't have much time left. we're going to be looking at doing a raid here soon. I guess just to kind of wrap all of this rambling up, because we definitely talked about a lot of complex and hot topic issues today. I think just to kind of summarize everything, I think that what I just want to bring into people's minds is that the healthcare system is really struggling. It is absolutely in crisis. The nurses, doctors, and other healthcare providers being in a burnout state is absolutely affecting the quality of healthcare that people are getting, which is absolutely affecting the ability of people with chronic illness to reach a state of wellness, which is going to affect their ability to contribute and function in society, which is going to have a reaching impact in their ability to be good life partners, parents, and workers. The system is not sustainable, and we need to start looking at all of these problems from a systemic point of view, where we recognize that each individual within it is only a piece of the problem, and rather than fully accountable for the problem, and that we start working together at reaching a solution that is good for everyone, so that everybody gets elevated up. And when I say everyone, I mean, healthcare workers, I mean patients, and I mean people of every gender and every ethnicity. Equity is what's important. All people need to be represented, and represented well, in order for healthcare to perform at its best. And it needs to be founded upon really good science. That's just a fundamental need. And I think that we need to be addressing this problem soon rather than later, because I don't think that our healthcare system is going anywhere good. It's like watching a train wreck. I feel like it's a train wreck that's a dumpster fire and is gonna explode sometime soon. And I'm kind of afraid to see where it's gonna go in the next 5 years if we don't do something dramatic to change its trajectory. But I think that we do have the potential to make change, and we do have the opportunity now to change that trajectory. And I hope that we take action before things blow up. Because we can. We do have the option to take action before we hit an absolute total explosion crisis point. That is an option. We don't have to wait for everything to blow up. We don't have to wait for it to be completely blah. I mean, we often do in this country, but I don't think that that's necessary. I don't think we have to wait for the fiery explosion to be like, maybe we should address that. Thank you, Strange Maniac. I appreciate the support. All right, so with that summary, let me go over to our credit screen. Boop. As always, thank you for everyone who is supporting us through donations. We really, really appreciate the support. That is everyone who has been giving bits, everybody who has been giving subs, everybody who's been following, everybody who has been viewing us live. All of that contributes to us being sustainable. We really very much appreciate all of that support. You guys are awesome. I specifically wanted to call out a thank you to the people who are donating on the coffee shop. Smolfy, Ella, David, Gamka, and Cuddle Me Spoon. Thank you very much for those donations. We really appreciate it. If you would like to make donations on the coffee shop, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/zebrapig. The link is down in the about page. You can do a one-time donation, or just like on Patreon, you can subscribe to tiers of support, and with those tiers of support, get different benefits. You can get access to game servers for 7 Days to Die or Minecraft. You can get options to play games with us. You can get vote the opportunity to vote on different things that we do on the stream. We do a monthly support group. All those kinds of things come through supporting us through the coffee shop. Thank you to everybody who has given us fan art. It's amazing. I really love seeing your artistic endeavors. They're awesome. If you would like to give us fan art, you can do that by going to the Discord, and any art that you put into the fan art channel, I will include in the slideshow here so that everybody can see your guys' awesome arty goodness. And also in my about page is a link to Siri Skulk's art. She's the person who has done all of my overlays and emotes. She's an amazing artist. You can go over to her art and you can see the emotes for Zebra Pig bigger, and you can also see all the other art that she does that's not related to Zebra Pig. She's amazing. Go give her some love and support. And let's go look and see who is on that we can harass and raid. Because, of course, we got to raid somebody. Oh, let's go raid Phantom Gender. I'm gonna water the face hole. Thank you, Strange Maniac. All right, so as always, guys, when we get over there, we're gonna throw 3 or 4 Doritos. So we're bringing them snacks. Make sure that you give Phantom Jenner lots of love. Let her know that they are super awesome. And as always, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate the support. We will be streaming again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday, and we will be playing the game Hue. And it's same time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We would love to see you there. Thank you so much for joining us. And you guys be sure to take care of yourselves. Bye.